Thank you, Chairman. We're now live streaming.
All right, so off we go. Yep. Right. Good evening.
Evening, Chair.
A warm
Evening.
welcome to councillors and officers attending this extraordinary council meeting, and to members of the public and press viewing the meeting via the live stream. I hope you are all keeping well, and my best wishes go out to you all in what is still a very difficult time for many people. I'm Councillor David Andrews, and I'm the chairman of East Lindsey District Council. This is our fifth remote meeting of full council under the new government legislation. To help assist us with the smooth running of this meeting, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping rules. Firstly, please only turn on your microphone when speaking. This is really important, otherwise the audio will become unclear with background noise. If you wish to speak in the meeting, please press the blue raised hand button on the participants list. I will then invite councillors to speak in the order that they requested speak. As usual, a councillor can speak for up to 5 minutes on an item. A democratic service officer will verbally notify the councillor when 30 seconds remain and when the 5 minutes is completed. If you need to leave the meeting, please verbally let me and the meeting know this before you leave. Otherwise, we won't know if you meant to leave the meeting or you have a connectivity problem. Not problem, issue. Finally, if you experience a connectivity issue, please contact Elaine Speed or Joanne Patterson on the contact numbers that you have been provided. Our officers will be supporting us during the meeting, and on that note, I'll hand over to Anne Good for item 1 to take the record of attendances. Okay,
David.
Anne? Yes.
I've got my hand up because I do apologise for my, well, the video that you're getting. I'm in and out. It's because where I'm being, or I'm taking the meeting from. So I do apologise, but I will let you know when I'm not here, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll
Okay.
just read through the list of attendees. If you could just confirm that you're present, please, councillors. Councillor Terry Aldridge.
Present.
Councillor David Andrews, present. Councillor Tom Ashton.
Present.
Councillor Richard Averson.
Present.
Councillor Stan Averson.
Present.
Councillor Adrian Benjamin.
Present.
Councillor Wendy Bowkett.
Present.
Councillor Billy Brooks.
Present.
Councillor Danny Brooks.
Present.
Councillor Jimmy Brooks.
Present.
Councillor Trevor Burnham.
Present.
Councillor Sandra Campbell-Wardman.
Present.
Councillor Graham Cullen.
Present.
Councillor Richard Cunnington.
Present.
Councillor Mark Dannett.
Present.
Councillor Colin Davey.
Present.
Councillor Sid Dennis. Councillor Sid Dennis is not with us at the moment. Councillor Sarah Devereux.
Present.
Councillor Colin Dickinson is an apology, I believe. Councillor
Yeah.
Dick Edgington.
Present.
Councillor Stephen Eyre.
Present.
Councillor Martin Foster.
Present.
Councillor Richard Fry.
Present.
Councillor William Gray.
Present.
Councillor Chris Green.
Present, but I have got a meeting at 7 o'clock, so I'll have to leave just before then.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Adam Grist.
Yeah, good evening, present.
Councillor Will Grover.
Present.
Councillor Alex Hall. Councillor Alex Hall. come back to Councillor Hall. Councillor David Hall.
Present.
Councillor Sandra Harrison.
Present.
Councillor Paul Hibbert-Greaves.
Present.
Councillor George Horton. Councillor Horton.
Disappeared again.
We'll come back to him in a moment. Councillor Tony Howard.
Present.
Councillor Ros Jackson.
Present.
Councillor Neil Jones.
Present.
Councillor Thomas Kemp.
Present.
Councillor Steve Kirk.
Present.
Councillor Terry Knowles.
Present.
Councillor Andrew Leonard.
Present.
Councillor Craig Leyland.
Present.
Councillor Jill Makinson Sanders.
Present. But can I just say there's lots of feedback going on and it's hard to hear some of it.
Can everybody just ensure that they have muted, and that might assist? Thank you. Councillor Graham Marsh.
Present.
Councillor Fiona Martin.
Present.
Councillor Helen Matthews.
Present.
Councillor Steve McMillan is an apology, I understand. Councillor Daniel McNally.
Present.
Councillor Edward Mossop.
Good evening. Yeah, present.
Councillor Claire Newman.
Present.
Councillor Sarah Parkin.
Present.
Councillor Julie Platt. Councillor Platt. Not with us at the moment, we'll come back. Councillor Paul Rickett.
Present.
Councillor Phil Smith.
Present.
Councillor Jim Swanson.
Present.
And Councillor Turton-Levers is an apology. I'll just go back to those that I didn't manage to hear from. So Councillor Sid Dennis. Councillor Dennis Withers, or perhaps is an apology. Does anybody know? Thank
He's
you.
not with us, no.
He's not with us, thank you. Councillor Alex Hall.
Present.
He's not with us. Oh, is
Thank
he?
you very much. Thank you, Councillor Hall. And Councillor George Horton.
Yes, shadowy present.
Thank you very much, Councillor Horton. And Councillor Julie Platt.
Yes, sorry, I was struggling to unmute.
That's all right. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you very much. Thank you. That completes, Chairman.
I don't
you.
think you called my. I don't think you called my name.
Did I? I do apologise. That is Councillor
Mind John.
Manjon. Thank you very much. I'll tick you as present. Thank you.
Thank you.
That completes, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne. Thank you. Item 2, disclosures of interest, if any. Any disclosures of interest? Councillor Colin David, please. Councillor David.
Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. Item B, as the Director of the Greater Lincolnshire Local Enterprise Partnership, which has commissioned Tourism Commission to undertake a review of the sector for Greater Lincolnshire and Rutland, and I am chairing that commission. And item 10, as the County Council representative on the Connected Coast Board. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Devro.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 11, which is the asset transfers to Alford. I've been party to this in my capacity as Town Councillor for Alford. I've already sought a clarification from the managing officer, so I will be leaving the meeting when you discuss item 11. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Howard.
Thank you. With regard to item 10, I wish to declare that I'm a member of the Mablethorpe PRG and also the CCT. And in addition to which, there is reference to tech partnership in the Skegness plan, and I, as a freelance invigilator, do work with them from time to time.
Thank you. Councillor Richard Avison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 15, motion 1. I do some work with Magna Vitae, so I'd feel more comfortable abstaining from any voting at that particular section. Thank you.
Hey. Councillor Claire Newman, please.
Evening, Chair.
Good
Item
evening.
10, I am on the PRG for Mablethorpe, and I'm also a member of the CCT. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sarah Parkin, please.
Yeah, I'd like to declare an interest as a trustee of Magna Vita. I have taken advice from the monitoring officer about the motion on notice, and have been advised not to take part in the debate or take part in the vote. And so just to make the council aware that that is how I'll proceed with the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ellen Matthews.
Good evening, Chair. I would
evening.
just like to declare that I am the chair of Mablethorpe Place Reference Group, which is the town's fund, and I am the chair of the coastal community team in Mablethorpe, and I'm also a trustee of Magna Vitae, and like Sir Parkin, will be not involved when the issue comes up with Magna Vitae. The item, sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Graham Cullen, please.
Good evening, Chair. Thank you. Just item 10, I'm a part of the PLG. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Craig Leyland.
Thank you, Chairman. Just for information, I sit on the Connected Coast Board, and I am also a GREP member of the board there as well, but I don't believe it stops me from taking part in the debate or voting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Danny Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to a bit of advice, really. I have a business which is on Skegness Foreshore, where the master plan is taking place. So I believe I will have to declare an interest and not take part.
Okay, thank you. Any more? Okay, we move on to item 3. The minutes, to confirm the open and exempt minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of July and to confirm the open minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of August. Could I have a proposer for those minutes, please?
Chairman, thank you. I'm happy to propose those minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder, please?
Yes,
I'll be happy to second them.
All right, thank you. Has anyone got any issues with any of those minutes? No? Okay, we will take them as read then.
Chair, I had raised my hand.
Oh, yes, Councillor Howard.
It's a little bit of advice that I'm looking for in actual fact.
Right.
With regard to page 40, also numbered as C10, the very last page of the minutes, it refers to the pavement licensing and the referral back to this meeting, which obviously is not taking place. Now, that is further spoken of in Appendix A to the next item, the actions on page 45. And it says what has been set up in place of it coming back to this meeting. However, the review is being done by an officer, and the actual resolution said that we were going to review in council, which is a political review. And I just wondered where we stood. Were we actually legal in ignoring the third resolution that we put through council by doing it in this manner? And it's probably a question to the monitoring officer.
Yeah. Okay, Michelle Stacks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just looking at those pages that Councillor Howard has referred to. It is a decision of council that it was due to come back. I'm not aware of discussions that have taken place around this. So may I, Councillor Howard, would you accept if I follow that up for you and report back in terms of the outcome of that? And if it is a matter that needs to come back to council in line with that recommendation, we can do that at the next full council.
Yes, and that would be fine. And please accept my apologies for not having spotted this at the pre-council meeting.
Thank you very much, Councillor Howard, and I'll do that for council. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So can I take those as read now, Councillor Howard?
Yeah, that'll be fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you then. So they're both taken as read. Now, item 4, action sheets. Over to Rob Barlow.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just to say that all the actions are marked as complete.
Thank you. Councillor Howard, can you take your blue hand down, please?
Sorry, Chair, will do.
That's all right, no problem. Item 5, communication from the chairman. Well, unfortunately, because of COVID-19, we're not doing anything, so I have nothing to report. Item 6, questions by the public. I believe there are none. So item 7, report of the chairman of the exec board. Councillor Leyland, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, councillors and officers. Yes, the report is before you. There's a number of issues on there and items I'd like to report and make comment on. But before I do, I'd just like to read out a press release today that was given by Councillor Martin Hill, who's the chair of the local outbreak engagement board in relation to COVID-19 management, the local management of how that's handled. And effectively, the press release is confirming that we are not going to be moving into another tier in terms of how we respond to COVID. So we will be staying as we are. So if you'll indulge me, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to read that out, if that's okay.
Yes, certainly.
Thank you. So this is the report and the press release that will come out today, and some of you might have already seen it, but I think it's important to reiterate. So looking at our current data, in my professional opinion, there is no reason to change our alert level at this point, but we do urge everybody to remember hands, face and space. And that's the message from Lincolnshire County Council's Director of Public Health, Derek Ward, at today's meeting of the Lincolnshire Outbreak Management Board. Key local political oversight and leadership to any local outbreak of COVID-19 is vital. The local outbreak engagement board has been set up with political representatives from Lincolnshire County Council and the district councils, the LEP plus the CCG and NHS providers, Health Watch and Police and Crime Commissioner. A COVID-19 health protection board has also been set up to provide further expert insight and guidance. We are monitoring a wide range of numbers which would give an early warning of a small area or whole county resurgence of COVID-19 in Lincolnshire, said Councillor Martin Hill, Chairman of the LOB and leader of Lincolnshire County Council. These include the results of testing carried out by our residents and hospital admissions for the disease, plus also things including sickness absent rates in some of our bigger public sector employers. Although the rates everywhere else are much lower, infection rates in Lincoln itself has gone up recently, but we aren't anticipating that will mean moving into any other tier at this stage. But we are being vigilant and we will do what is necessary going forward. Our message from the LOB is this morning is that this is the status quo, but we are very much alert to the circumstances changing. So just to reiterate, Chairman, we are staying in the medium tier, which means that we reinforce the message, as has already been stated, of hands, face and space. So I think that's quite an important thing for us to all acknowledge. Thank you, Chair. And then going on to my report, the Vital and Viable Market Towns update. You'll see there's quite a considerable amount of work being done, and this was obviously instigated pre-COVID, but obviously the impacts of COVID mean that we're having to adapt and change that as we go forward. And a good piece of work for the market towns coming up to encourage people to use our local businesses as we approach the darker winter months and approaching Christmas. We go on then to the test and trace support payment scheme, and this ensures that infected individuals and their close contacts isolated. One of our most powerful tools for controlling the spread of coronavirus is self-isolation helps prevent family, friends and community from catching the virus. But obviously it does impact on people, and the new test and trace, there is a grant available for those that lose their income because they are maybe having to face staying at home in isolation. There is information on our website, and that's something that we have been promoting via social media to make sure that those unfortunate enough to have to self-isolate are not losing out too much when they lose their income. congratulations to the officers and awareness of how much work has gone into preparing this in a short space of time. And we're working closely with PS2 and our partners in South Holland District Council and Boston Borough Council to develop a consistent scheme in this respect. Moving on, Ageing Better, our rural strategic partnership. The Centre for Ageing Better, Lincolnshire County Council and East Lindsey District Council have launched an exciting new partnership, and it's there to read, and it's something that we are doing very well with our partners across Lincolnshire, is supporting our progression into Ageing Better, and it's something that should be welcomed. Going on to community-led housing in East Lindsey, you'll be aware that there's a number of schemes that we're working on with local councils, and this scheme is now really coming into its own. I'm very pleased to see that as well. And again, well done to all those people participating in this councils and our officers who have seen this go forward. Strategic alliance updates. Those have been coming through quite regularly now. I'm very pleased to see the progress that we are being made, and the updates there of the leadership engagement, agile working as we're going through with East Lindsey and the Boston Alliance, a future leaders program, which has been welcomed by staff and officers, and of course the whole purpose of this to drive forward better efficiencies for the councils and better services for our residents. We are delivering on the savings and creating those opportunities as well. Last few things to mention, we are being recognised for our database in terms of council tax, business rates and Royal Mail, and the cleanliness of this data. And this places ahead of several other neighbouring councils, and it's good work, and it's very helpful for our residents to know that we have that information in good order. And to reiterate, the Stay Safe message, you'll probably be aware that we were put forward for an award for the Stay Safe, Save Lives digital campaign early on in the COVID outbreak, when we were shortlisted for a Lincolnshire Technology and Innovations Award for 2020. And this was a partnership between ourselves, ELDC, the DMO Visit Lincoln, and the NHS, and that was seen by over 500,000 people. And obviously we're aware that we've received accelerated funding for Skegness and Mablethorpe, which is linked to the Town Guilds, and obviously an important agenda item tonight. So happy to take questions, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you for the press release, and thank you for your report, Councillor Leyland. Councillor Sarah Parkin, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to take an opportunity. Obviously, I'll be speaking much more about the scrutiny report when it comes to that part of the agenda. But it really did give me heart to read the Vital and Viable update in your report, Councillor Leyland, particularly because so many of the points that we have raised within that scrutiny panel, we can already see being addressed in terms of promotion and marketing, place development and public realm strategy. And I mean, obviously I will talk to about that more and more, but we have a really, really good opportunity here in terms of people wanting to stay local for their trade and for their shopping. And I think that if we can manage to harness that and develop that and build on that, then in fact, all of them, everything that we are trying to do will come together in actual synergy. And I think all of those schemes, particularly the Hope and Light project that's coming our way in Christmas, will really help on that. And I'm sure that I speak for the whole panel when I wish that project well, and wish all of those projects well. Councillor Leyland, in terms of question, obviously we've had the update today on the COVID situation, and I think many of us who are concerned about our residents, about the impact of social isolation and also economic harm to our economies, will be pleased about that. But what kind of timeline are we looking at in terms of a review of that? I do know it's a movable feast, and I think we'd appreciate knowing when a review would be approaching.
Thank you. Councillor Rosalind Jackson, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm also very gratified that the Vital and Viable Louth Action Plan is coming forward. The question I have about that is, well, I'm really keen to see the timescales and the budgets behind that. So when are they going to be available to councillors? On the test and trace support, I noticed that there is a discretionary element to that. And I'm also quite keen that councillors can have a bit more information about the extent of that discretionary element, so that we can better advise our residents and let them know, and let them you know, tell them that there's help available and how much help is likely to be available in their particular cases. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Tony Howard.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, in the same vein as Councillor Parkin, I'd be very interested to know more about the COVID management group. How often does it meet? How often does it review the tier levels? A little bit more background, if I could. Does it have the ability to meet if there is a daily spike, or these things do come upon us more in hours than in weeks? Going on to the Vital and Viable report, whilst I welcome this for the 4 towns that I mentioned, I find myself yet again having to point out to this council that we have a 5th market town in East Lindsey, namely Mablethorpe. Now, I know Mablethorpe has taken over running of its own market, but that does not mean that it's also left East Lindsey. Mablethorpe was very much part of the Vital and Viable project, and to find out that it's been missed out on this, and the report in several places refers to the 4 market towns, you know, I could get a little bit miffed at this. It's you know, some kind of, I don't know, marketism, some sort of bias against Mablethorpe, and I'd like it to, you know, not be replicated ever again. I live in hope, and I look for reassurance that we will always be regarded as a market town. Just because we're at the seaside does not mean that we can't run a very successful market. Oh, or is it jealousy that we do run a very successful market? I'd be interested in your comments on that. With regard to the Ageing Better, this is great news, and I think it fits very well with the work that's been done with the Towns Fund bid for Mablethorpe, and especially with regard to us looking for the Centre for Future Living, and that is to be welcomed. With that, thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Parkin, could you take your blue hand down, please? Councillor Edward Mossop, please.
Yes, good evening, Chairman. Thank you. I'm really pleased, Leader, that you've highlighted the community-led housing issue in East Lindsey. I've been working with Christine Vickery, who is the community-led housing officer at East Lindsey, and she's a good officer, and hopefully I'm getting an update fairly soon from her about an issue in a village in my ward. I would urge you and portfolio holder Councillor Bowkett to prioritise those bedsit communities in the villages and towns. I know we've got a number of those in East Lindsey, and they are sadly lacking behind very unsuitable, unpopular and outdated buildings that we really need to upgrade. And I just wanted to emphasise that I feel they should be given some kind of priority to resolve the issues that they have. And you mentioned COVID, the message from Councillor Hill. And I just wonder what the local advice is being given to visitors at the coast at this current time. Are we releasing any clear guidance about visitors due to the restrictions, particularly appertaining to those areas where there is high risk and people really should not be travelling out of their own areas? So I think we need to be doing this in our own particular press releases locally. And also, due to COVID restrictions in my neck of the woods, we do have this booking system now for the Don and Up Seal visiting season. And I saw today a couple of very limp signs on the edge of North Somercotes trying to discourage visitors who haven't booked. And I really feel that perhaps a message to highways or whoever to try and persuade them to put some more of these signs up on the A16, so that if people do turn up, they're being warned at an early stage that they will be turned away if they haven't got any booking. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jill Makinson-Sanders, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I'm delighted to hear that the ED team is committed to Vital and Viable, but I am concerned about the capacity issue with so much time devoted, and not unsurprisingly, to the Towns Fund. I'm keen to know how effective the Reopening the High Street campaign has been in my market town in particular, because there's been quite a lot of criticism. And we are frustrated about the lack of consultation with Vital and Viable. And whilst beaming pictures onto buildings is nice and soft and fluffy, I've done a straw poll over the last few days with a large number of residents in Louth who overwhelmingly would like to see free parking in December. They think that would actually assist the shops and businesses far more than anything else that we could possibly do in the town centre. So I don't know why nobody came to us, nobody discussed it with us. Some of us local members are in the town absolutely every day of the week, and we do know how the town clip works. And you know, I guess this report's been written by officers saying the Louth Action Plan will soon be signed off. What's in the action plan? We have no clue. Where is it? What is it? Nil point for that, I'm afraid. On to Ageing Better. I was really heartened to see that it's going to have a volunteering section. And I'd just like to tell you that on Sunday night, I had a 91-year-old lady who's been isolating in Louth. She's fed up to the back teeth of being sitting in, and she's volunteered to come and help at my, what's called Bundles of Joy. It's my baby bank that I'm opening for people in Louth and District next month. So if anybody's got any spare stuff that they don't need for their 0 to 18 months, I'm a happy recipient. And thank you for the Strategic Alliance updates. It was actually one of the recommendations of our scrutiny panel. And I can only assume that Mr. Gilbert took notice of our discussions and acted on it before we could publish our report. So thank you very much indeed for that.
Thank you. Councillor David Mannion.
Thank you very much. Once again, going back to the Vital and Viable, this is a great initiative from the point of view of the market towns. My talking to the town people and the businesses is that the initiative is very welcome, and the work of the development team is very appreciated. So we hope to see more good things coming out of this. In response to Councillor Howard, I think the market towns would value a fraction of the money spent in Mablethorpe and Skegness to the Towns Fund. In terms of COVID, it may be worthwhile to, it would be worthwhile not to lower the guard, and I would be asking Councillor Hill what the plans for a Tier 3 lockdown would be at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Andrew Leonard, please.
Yeah, just one point. It's an observation in respect to the light displays in the centre of towns. Whilst I'm not against doing that sort of thing or encouraging people to come to market towns, in fact, I'm quite happy for you to promote Louth in that way. However, does that not breach the COVID rules, encouraging people to come to form essentially a mass gathering to look at light shows? I'd be very sceptical whether you're not breaching the government's guidelines on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Leyland, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the questions. Going through them in turn, Councillor Parkin, thank you very much for your supportive comments over the work that's happening within our market towns. In respect of the COVID work, and this will answer a number of the questions that have been directed to me this evening, the panel usually meets, the lower panel usually meets every 2 weeks. It's now gone back to its weekly meeting that was initiated at the start of all this. And the Lincolnshire Resilience Forum actually meets every day, and that feeds information into a number of bodies and meetings, and Lower being the Lower group being a key meeting and user of that information. So in respect of the concern about its reactive stance in terms of COVID spikes, it is well placed to meet those, and I know that the members of that would meet as necessary to deal with it, but there is the facility to meet weekly. That has changed, as I say, from 2 weekly, and the Lincolnshire Resilience Forum meets every day. And as I said in the statement, it's made up of district council leaders, officers, and Lincolnshire County Council. So we feel we do have a good understanding of the issues as they arise. And quite rightly, it's been pointed out that these are, rapidly changing situations that we need to be able to take forward and react to in good time as we deal with it. So thank you for those positive comments about the work in the Market Towns Council of Parkin. Moving on to Councillor Jackson, quite happily update you away from this meeting on the questions you had about the budget and also the discretionary element of the Test and Trace Support Fund. So if you're happy for me to advise later, once I can get that information for you, I'll happily provide it. So Councillor Jackson, but thank you for those questions. And I think you also raised the issue of the COVID as well. Councillor Howard, in respect of the COVID, I think I've answered that. And if you remember, when I was a portfolio holder for the local economic development at East Lindsey, I oversaw the transfer of the market to Mablethorpe Town Council, and it's done very well for itself. In respect of the work that is happening, our place officer, Lisa Collins, is discussing with town councils the work that the towns, there's so many acronyms about it, I've got to make sure I've got this right. There's a towns engagement fund that governments have initiated and given to local authorities to help with recovery from COVID. And Lisa Collins, as our place officer, is dealing with meetings with town councils to promote that. So that she's meeting with councils along the coast to promote that. Mablethorpe is on the list. And I do take your point about Mablethorpe having a very successful market. And Lisa will be working with local businesses and town councils and the bid to bring forward plans for Christmas. So there's no one being left out on this. And I do have to balance the programme that is happening for market towns. It's long been a challenge in East Lindsey about how we deal with market towns and the particular issues that they have. And the work that has been initiated by the ED team has been long planned and is welcome in those market towns as we go forward to deal with those specific issues that we all have as communities. So I'm pleased to acknowledge that we will be engaging with coastal towns, and also pleased to acknowledge Mablethorpe is a market town, but whose charter might not go back to 1220 or some such early year, but valued all the same. Where are we? Councillor Mossop. Can I thank you for your question, your support for the community-led housing schemes. It is important work, and I'm pleased that you made those positive comments. In relation to the local advice that's being given in relation to people travelling in from other areas, it's critically important that those people that are travelling from areas in different tiers to our own adhere to the advice that's given. In respect of how we deal with that locally, I know a number of businesses are making judgment calls about whether they accept visitors from higher tier areas. We are in a slightly difficult position because we don't actually have any enforcement powers in this respect as a local authority. And I believe that the police are in the same position. But it is important, and I've been on the, been interviewed a number of occasions, you're reiterating the point that if you are traveling to East Lindsey from a restricted area, please do adhere to the local advice. And effectively, the upper tier advice is don't have any unnecessary travel, which of course is impacting, potentially could impact our local businesses. And in fact, we are aware of one business that has raised this as an issue with our MPs in terms of the effect that the regional lockdowns are having on our tourism economy. In respect to the issues you raise about Donanook, I know this is an issue that has reached the attention of Councillor McNally, and I'm sure he'll be happy to update on the progress he is making to deal with the issues that you've raised. Councillor Sanders, I'm sorry you don't feel as enthusiastic as other councillors have talked about the work that's going on in respect to the market towns. Again, it's just unfortunate that you're not as supportive or feel that it's not as welcome as we're hearing it is in other towns, and also with your fellow councillors in Louth. And I do acknowledge your positive comments about the Ageing Better programme, and also acknowledge the response to your scrutiny panel that you hosted a few weeks back, which I thought was very well chaired. So congratulations to you on that. Councillor Mannion, thank you for your positive comments about the work that we're doing in Spilsby on the Vital and Viable programme. Good to hear, and pleased it's being well received. And of course, take your comments regarding COVID very seriously, because I know of your professional interest in that work. In relation to your comment to Councillor Howard about the Towns Fund, I think it's important to reiterate the work that we are doing for the Towns Fund will have district-wide benefits when it's all put into place. The information that we're gathering, the potential for social media, the interest that we have in a connected coast and a connected tourism offer across all the attractions that we have, the Wolds, our market towns, it has a great potential. And obviously we're going to be talking about the scrutiny paper later on, which recognises that that sort of cross purpose that we have in East Lindsey in respect of our tourism offer. So it's important work. Councillor Leonard, just in respect of your concerns about the work that's being done in Louth and our market towns, this has been very carefully considered. The social distancing and the group of 6 rationale is enforced and understood rather, and this is about people coming into town to support their local businesses within the guidance that the government have set up. So I'm confident as our officers that this falls within that remit. But I do thank you all for your questions and interest, and as any information becomes available about the COVID issue, I will of course share that with you urgently through the usual portals that we have. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Leyland. Item 8, annual overview report to council. To note the annual overview report to council. Councillor Fiona Martin, please.
Sorry, Chairman, just to let you know, I'm leaving the meeting.
Sorry, who is that?
It's Councillor Chris Green.
Oh, right, okay, Chris. Sorry, I didn't recognise your voice.
It's all right.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be able to present this slightly delayed annual report to council this evening. You'll be relieved to hear I'm not going to read through all 4 pages of it, but I hope everybody's found it interesting, because the work of the Overview Committee is extremely interesting. I would like to take this opportunity to thank, in particular, all officers who've been involved with scrutiny panels this year, but in particular, Alison Penn, Elaine Speed and Rebecca James, who've supported all the overview meetings as well as the panels. So thank you very much to them. Also, thank you to all members who've been involved, either chairing a panel or part of a panel. It hasn't been the easiest of environments to do scrutiny work in this year. And I do wish to thank everybody who's been involved. I'm pleased to see we've got 2 final reports on the agenda this evening, which just goes to demonstrate that scrutiny work has continued even though COVID's been rife. I think the only other thing I want to say really is that on Friday in the members' point brief, we will be advertising for new topics to in which to build the programme, scrutiny programme in for next year. We've just about got to the end of our current programme. There's 1 or 2 reports still outstanding, but we've done the majority of the work on our annual programme. So we will be asking for people to put forward ideas for scrutiny topics for the coming year. So please look out for that on Friday, and please get those topics in so that we can consider them at our meeting in December. Quite happy to answer questions that anybody may have on the report. Otherwise, I just ask that you note the report.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Roslyn Jackson, please.
Thank you, Councillor Martin, for that report. 2020's events have made some of the scrutinies, in particular, the scrutinies that I chaired on markets and on rough sleeping. There have been huge changes in those realms. Do we need to review those scrutinies that reported pre-COVID and are still on the tracker in terms of their relevance? And do you plan to review items on the tracker in the context of, you know, COVID has changed so much about the way we operate? Thank you.
Councillor Craig Leyland, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to acknowledge the report and also thank Councillor Martin and her scrutiny panel, overview panel, for the work that they do in relation to supporting the Executive Board, and also the Executive Board taking on recommendations from the overview process. And just noting the percentage of influence decisions that we've made in the region of 70%. And I think that shows a healthy respect for the overview process and the work of it. And I know that portfolio holders willingly engage in the process. So just to thank you for all the work that's been done and the nature of that work being thorough and reasonable and respectful. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Jill Makinson-Sanders, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to say thank you. And I'd say how much I enjoy overview. It's a really interesting committee to serve on, and it's nice because we can actually do something which is good for both the council and our residents. Ros Jackson, I'd just like to tell you that the market in Louth was buzzing today. I don't think there's much social distancing going on, but there were lots and lots of stalls. It was really, really good. So whatever we did with the market scrutiny, I was on it as well. Some of it's working at least. And I just would also like to reiterate big thanks to Alison and particularly to Rebecca. Rebecca is invaluable, and she's there till all hours, and she never grumbles, and she's always the same and always very, very helpful. So thank you very much indeed for that. It's very, very, it's nice when people are so committed.
Thank you. Councillor Sarah Parkin, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I feel, having worked with Fiona for so long, it would be remiss not for me to actually thank her, and I think council should look to Fiona as well. We've thanked the officers rightly, she's thanked the panels and she's thanked the committee rightly, but Fiona has shown real leadership of the committee in a really difficult time coming out of lockdown. And I think although we are working in a completely different way, I think it is very clear that that has not impacted on the quality of the overview and the scrutiny that we have within the council. And, you know, I think it would be remiss for us not to recognise that that is under Fiona's leadership. So thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to come back, Councillor Martin?
Yes, I will, please, Chair. Councillor Jackson, we've had this afternoon the pre-meeting for next week's overview meeting, and just the topic you raised was raised at that meeting, and that's the need to go back to, I think, several panels, maybe the child poverty panel as well, and the markets and 1 or 2 others to look at how COVID has impacted or maybe has changed the recommendation. It would be extremely useful if anybody who's chaired a panel feels that COVID has changed maybe how we look at the recommendations that came from that panel, could just either send me an email or drop a line to Alison or Elaine, just sort of highlighting that fact, so that when we look at the new programme, we can highlight those issues in the programme, because I think I've just mentioned 2, but there's possibly more. So yes, your point's well made, and one we acknowledged this afternoon. Councillor Leyland, thank you for your kind words. Yes, we were quite pleased. It always feels as if the recommendations we're putting forward maybe aren't being taken forward until we sit down and add up and work out the percentage. And 70% is, we feel, a good percentage that are acted upon and taken forward. It's never going to be 100%, but I think there's a lot of councils who would be pleased with 70% of the recommendations put forward through scrutiny. Councillor Meckinson-Saunders, I'm pleased that you enjoy your work on overview. I'm biased, but I think it's the best part of the council and the best work on the council. And finally, Councillor Parkin, can I thank you as well as Vice Chairman for all your hard work, and just say it's a good job my wallpaper's red, because I blushed as well at your kind words. But thank you very much indeed. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Councillor Graham Marsh, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of quick points I note from what members have said. We get one Louth member, Councillor Leonard, complaining that we won't be observing the COVID rules if we put on a light show and questions the sensibility of it. And we get another Louth councillor saying that because of the work they're doing, they're having a market that's absolutely buzzing and they're not observing the distance between. I wish they'd get their act together or talk about it before they come on, because it's just we can't do right for wrong. If we help them, they don't like it. If we do something off the back of our hands, they don't like it because they're not involved. If you want to know how to run a light show, go and look at Spilsby. They did one early this year. I'm sure that their town council will enlighten you how effective and good it was, and how it filled the town. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Item 9 is reports from scrutiny and policy panels. There are 2. The first one is carbon management and climate change scrutiny report. To consider a scrutiny report, please note that the appendix to the report are available as part of the online pack only. Councillor Phil Smith, please.
Thank you, Chair. So you'll be very, very pleased to know that I'm not going to stand and read all of the report, and I apologise for its length. It could have been much longer. I'm sure you're glad that it's not. So I want to thank the panel who were all really, really engaged on this, and I think it was a really great example of the way in which. I mean, this is my first scrutiny, so it was a real eye-opener to me to how well and non-politically we can work. Everyone was so thoroughly engaged with the subject, and everyone was working together. We didn't always agree, but it was a really constructive process. So thank you to everyone on the panel. Again, thank you particularly to Rebecca James, who was great, and also to Sarah Barker, our officer for climate change and the environment, and also to Graham as our portfolio holder, who again was incredibly helpful and supportive throughout. And I hope that we can, while it is a long report, it was actually quite a short scrutiny, and it's an issue which covers every element of the council's operations. We could have gone on forever, so it is something which needs more and more work, and I do hope that all of the recommendations are taken up, particularly the further work for a further committee to take up those other things that we weren't able to get around to. It's quite easy when you're making lots of recommendations and you're looking at things to seem a little bit chippy. But I do want to say, as much as you can, and I do in places sort of suggest that we should have done more in the past. There's no mileage in wringing our hands about things that we haven't done. And the really important thing is that we've clearly got a real sense of movement and change amongst officers and amongst the council to really drive this agenda forward. And it is an agenda which covers everything and requires new ways of thinking and sometimes new ways of acting right the way across the council. So I hope that's something that everybody can get on board with, and I hope that the unanimity of the panel is indicative of unanimity across the council. I did have a couple of the report is written very much around both the recommendations of the carbon management plan and also the council's requirements and statutory requirements for carbon reduction and how we might achieve those. There is the other element in the title of the report which we never really address, which is climate change itself. And it's a really important thing that at some point we have not a job for scrutiny, I think, but we really do need to have a very formal plan for assessing and dealing with the impact of climate change. We do live in an area where, whilst things like ocean level rise isn't going to have a massive effect across the country, it is going to have a very, very specific effect here and along the Lincolnshire coast and the Fens, a disastrous one, quite possibly. So these are things that we really need to be making plans for, which this scrutiny panel did not address in any way. There was a couple of questions that I got from members of the public, some of which following this going online, and I was hoping that they might ask questions as a member of the public, but I see that they haven't done. So I'd like to very quickly address those because they were issues that came up on the panel and which the panel disagreed with a little, which was around Scope 3 carbon. This is carbon which isn't in our direct control, some of which we include in the plan. Oh, okay. I won't address that then, unless someone wants to ask me a question about it. But yeah, thank you. Great piece of work, I think, and I hope that if you haven't done yet, that everyone gets a chance to read through not only the recommendations but the detail of the report.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Tony Howard, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Phil, for the report. You quite rightly, in the second recommendation on page 83, point the finger at the proposed Horncastle building project. But I would also just like to point out that we also maybe have other buildings in the pipeline that may have got missed, so to speak. And I'm thinking especially with regard to the Towns Fund bid, where there's quite a few buildings involved in that particular project. So whilst it rightly says all future buildings are commissioned in such a way, I think that there's just a little gap there between what we have and what we will have, taking into account what's in the pipeline. I think that those in the pipeline might also get missed. And I hope that the people reading the report will take that on board, as well as Horncastle and any future ones. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Graham Marsh, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to say a big thank you to Phil and the rest of the scrutiny panel. I think they did a really good job on this. It was a massive subject, and I think they've identified the key points, supported by Sarah, who was tremendous at giving them the right direction and the information they needed. I think this is a really good start to this, and it shows the council's commitment that even before this report has come out, every report that goes forward now must have the carbon consideration section to it. A real big advancement, so people will start thinking about this. But we cannot drive only this. We have so many other things that we have a responsibility to do, and while every one of them are important in their own ways, I think we've made a real good start here. I quite agree with Phil that we need to pick off topics and give them real good scrutiny and recommendations in the future rather, bearing in mind that we have a finite reserve of finances that we can do this with. Now, some would say there's nothing more important than stopping the coast from flooding, and you're quite right. But we've got to be realistic, and we can't stop everything just to concentrate on this. But a really good report, Phil. Well done to the team, well done to the officers supported. I think this is a really good start to a very important subject, which the council is giving due regard to. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor David Hall, please.
Okay, I would just like to know the with regard to the report, the additional questions that were asked by the members of the public.
Okay, Councillor Jill Makin-Sanders, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to ask that as well. I thought you'll be amused to hear that. Oh, well, I was going to say, first of all, well done, Phil. It was an excellent report, and given it was your first one, it was even better. So well done. Take a big bow. The men who've been working on the malfunctioning Anglian Water project in Westgate, which has been going on since 2017 and still isn't right, you'd be amused to hear that, you probably won't, you'd be absolutely horrified, that they drive daily to do this work from County Durham, which is actually in lockdown, but they are key workers. But that just puts it all into context. Anglian Water tell me, oh, it doesn't matter what their contractors do because there's nothing they can do about it. Good news is you can have a tick in the box. We've got the community orchard coming up in Louth. I've managed to get one in Westgate Fields, and I'm helping support that. That's going in the next month or two. So big tick for doing something green in Louth already. Councillor Marsh will be relieved to know we're progressing on something positive in Louth. And I was going to ask about all the buildings that are going up for the towns in the Towns Fund thing. Do they go through? I will call it. Are they scrutinised for the carbon ticks by East Lindsey, or are they outside our jurisdiction? Because when we looked at the Colonnade project, we did ask those questions when the overview team looked at them, and I don't think they had been considered, and we felt it was really important that they were considered, and it is part of the Towns Fund, I know. So I'm not sure what fits into the Towns Fund and what gets the ticks in the box for our carbon, for what we're looking at for our carbon. So perhaps somebody could come up with the answer to that, please.
Councillor Andrew Leonard, please.
Yeah, just wanted to say, brilliant report, really good. And as Councillor Marsh has just said, certain items need to be picked out of it. And as Councillor Howard said earlier on, the main one which sticks out to me is on page 65, in reference to the Horncastle building. And it quite clearly states that there should be a review of its eco credentials before it even goes out to tender. We want, it may be cost neutral, but it certainly is a long way short of being carbon neutral. So I think well done, Phil and the gang, really good put together report, and let's hope these actions can be picked off and acted upon. Thank you.
Councillor Craig Leyland, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Like Councillor Marsh, I think it's recognition of the report. I suspect Councillor Smith has written other reports. I sense the academic rigour of this and see that and welcome it. I think the topic is one that will create discussion and differences of opinion, but I think the direction of travel for this council, as Councillor Smith has recognised, is an important one. And so I welcome that report, and I know Councillor Marsh, as portfolio holder, will go through the recommendations and bring those to the executive board for consideration on how we progress them. Without stealing some of Councillor Smith's thunder in terms of some of the questions that have been asked, I think the question about the carbon footprint of buildings suggested in the Towns Fund, I think we have, well, I understand from the lead officer for the Towns Fund that we have discussed those with Sarah Barker as they've been progressed. So that is work already in progress. But I do welcome the report and its rigour, and it's going to be an ongoing process of evaluation and delivery over many, many years as we deal with this matter, because it's not going away. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Phil Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to all of the questioners there. So just picking up as Craig was discussing the matter of buildings, I think one of the key things that we need to be doing, as I say in the report, is thinking of these all new buildings as being passive buildings from the design stage. It's quite cheap to build a passive building if you design it from first principles. Designing something and then retrofitting it in some way, or then modifying that design, is neither efficient nor cheap, carbon efficient nor financially cheap to do. So it does need to be something that happens at the design stage. This is all about good design, both in terms of us getting good value from a building and not ending up with punitive on costs. And whilst I appreciate also what Graham said, this is indeed just the start. There is a lot of work to continue to do. But what Graham says about the finances, the other thing we need to think about is not only what it costs us to build something or not build something, but the cost of not being passive will have for us in the future, because all the carbon that building generates in perpetuity is an on cost for us, and we are just laying ourselves open to massive building an albatross for our own necks. The things that the members of the public said, Jill, David, thank you very much for raising that, particularly around why we had included employee travel in the thing, and this is something we disagreed with as a panel. Not that we just it has to be included statutorily ultimately, but it's not something we can directly control. However, in this instance, it is something which we knew that we could make a win on. So I had someone saying, "Oh, well, you've only included that because you know you can do something about it. You haven't included any other scope 3," and that makes it seem very cynical that we've only included employee travel because we know we're moving towards home working. So it's like we can win on that, whereas we're not going to do that. But it's really, firstly, it's really, really important that we do shout about the wins that we make, because we as a council needs to lead across the district and encourage other people to do similar things. On the flip side, it's also important that we recognise that we are doing that because we also take into consideration the intended consequences of winning for travel, because that will have consequences in terms of heating and lighting bills at home. We know things as well, because this isn't just about our carbon, it's about the net carbon production from our actions, and often our actions are unintended consequences. have unintended consequences. I think that's everybody's questions dealt with there. So there you go. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Right. Item 9B. How does East Lindsey District Council support the district's visitor economy scrutiny report? To consider a scrutiny report, please note that the appendix to the report are available as part of the online pack only. Sarah Parkin, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I just want to pay tribute to the patience of the panel on this one. We actually ended up meeting over the course of an entire year, which was a bit of a big ask. We extended the panel once so that we could oversee the development of the destination strategy, and then we ended up getting caught up in lockdown. And the pragmatic thing to do, considering the subject matter of the panel, was then to have a pause and then come back and see whether we were looking at a new set of challenges and a new arena of development, or whether we felt that we could stay the course. And I think we really did feel as a panel that in fact the impact of COVID and the impact of lockdown in effect magnified the findings that we'd made up until that point. Also, like Councillor Smith, want to pay have a massive debt of gratitude to the officers involved. Lydia and Rebecca were absolutely first rate in their support for us. Before I move on to the kind of content of the report, I am aware of a few areas in formatting. When it came to overview, there was just a sentence or two that I then wanted to add, and that has knocked the formatting out, so I apologise for that. And also the 400,000 figure in terms of the Magna Vita economic impact should actually be 4 million. It's right in one place and wrong in the other, and I just want to highlight that it's the 4 million figure that is the correct one. Moving on to kind of the recommendations and the findings as a whole, I think the report is fairly self-explanatory, and as I've mentioned before, I think what is brilliant is that we haven't the process of doing the report and of entering into the scrutiny has made us aware of the ongoing work that was going on with the ED team. And so really there came a natural synergy that as we were finding and moving towards forming those recommendations were coming on stream anyway. But obviously they're for the long term. They are long-term recommendations, and the work has started and then needs to carry on. We need to see East Lindsey as a key driver in collaborating for tourism and economic development over the next few years for Lincolnshire. The STEAM data for Lincolnshire is really, really very clear that as a district, we are the lead driver for tourism within Lincolnshire, and therefore, while recognising that a destination management organisation is crucial for us as a district, we need to drive that. We cannot afford for East Lindsey to be second fiddle, third fiddle, fourth fiddle. We need to be front and centre of that. The idea of development of place, referring that to public realm strategy, the vital and viable work, and then onto the marketing and the promotion is really, really key, really, really vital. And we can see in Councillor Leyland's report that a lot of those issues are being addressed already. And obviously, as we're moving on to the Towns Fund work, we can see that happening as well. We will have a much stronger sense of place and identity moving those initiatives forward. Lydia has spoken to us about the importance of promotion and marketing, about the fluidity and the speed at which that people want to make the decision makings about their destinations for holidays, and that's crucial that we incorporate that. But also when Councillor Davey came to speak to us, he made a really important point that we need to encourage Lincolnshire people to stay local. We need to encourage people who are here as residents to stay here for their leisure time and really promote it as a green destination for people who are already here. Finally, I want to draw on to the kind of the internal workings of East Lindsey in terms of tourism and economic development as a whole, and draw on a phrase that Councillor Howard came up with, I think probably in our very first meeting, in terms of tourism proofing our decision making as a council. It was really clear when we started off with the evidence that there were decisions that were taken that had an impact on economic development and tourism that the portfolio holders themselves didn't necessarily have sight of. And so that's why we've made that recommendation that all of our decision making, both as executive councillors and as backbenchers, has that recommendation in that consideration to the economic development impact that it has, because particularly now coming out of COVID and coming out of the restrictions, that is just more and more important, that everything that we do as a council has that front and centre. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Adam Grist, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I was very happy to be part of this scrutiny process. I think along with Councillor Kirk, my colleague, who we share this portfolio responsibility. I think we're interviewed on a couple of occasions. As Councillor Parkin said, it was a rather protracted process in the end for circumstances beyond our control, but a really good piece of work nonetheless, and one that I think both Councillor Kirk and I welcome. It was there were some good challenges and some fair lines of inquiry into this very important area of the council's operation, and I'm more than happy to accept the report and to move the recommendations forward. I think, again, I speak for Councillor Kirk when I say that we are broadly comfortable with everything that's in this report and the specific recommendations. And I think they're nothing but a big help to help us move forward as a team, along with our officer corps, to drive this very important area forward. As Councillor Parkin has just said, as we exit COVID, the COVID protocols, and hopefully that's sooner rather than later, the local economy, our market towns, our coastal economy, tourism will be even more important than it's ever been in terms of aiding our local recovery and driving the economy forward. And I think this is perhaps just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the weight and the focus that we have as a council to give to this area, because over the coming years, as I say, this is the most important thing. This solves most of the challenges that we have, or helps to solve them. Without local spend, without a vibrant local economy, then we are nothing. So it's really important we get this right, along with partners across our county and our region, to ensure that we do have a vibrant economy moving forward. So thank you to the panel for all the work they did. I think it was really helpful, and I look forward to progressing this over the coming months with Steve, Councillor Kirk, and Executive Board colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Kirk, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'd like to echo colleagues' comments of my colleague, Councillor Grist, and also thank Councillor Parkin. It was a very good piece of work. There's a lot of detail in there, and whilst we only have the 6 recommendations, I actually think we probably have 150 questions, because she's quite right in some of the things she says. When we think of Lincolnshire as a whole, and the number of people who visit Lincolnshire, 80% of the tourists of Lincolnshire are going to the coast. There is a challenge there of how we manage them, not only getting to the coast with our road infrastructure, which is mentioned in the report, but also how we manage them when they get to the coast. And as was mentioned in the report again, how then we encourage some of them to go and visit and stay in the Wolds, our hidden gem. So there's a lot of really interesting things in here. And I would actually ask of Councillor Martin how often she would allow this council to revisit this subject, because as been said by Councillor Grist, this is changing quickly. And as we come out of COVID, there's going to be a lot of things which are slightly different to the way that we went into them. So Councillor Parkin made the point, not only in this report, but in the words she just spoken, about how things are slightly different now. And as we do come out of COVID, there is no doubt about it, every single place in East Lindsey needs to be driving the tourism spend. Every single market town, every single village, every single B&B in the Wolds, whatever it may be, not just the coast, needs to be pulling in as much money as we possibly can. So I think it is an important piece of work. Recommendations, again, I have not an issue with a single one of those, but I would think possibly there's individual strands of this report that could be subject to further scrutiny, so we can really focus in on them and drive them forward as a council. That's it. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Makinson-Sanders, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, it's a very theoretical report, and it's an interesting one with looking at the theoretical side of tourism. I did want to say something about the practical side, and I think COVID has really amplified this. We're still getting a lot of tourists in Louth at the moment. They're not all going to the seaside, Councillor Kirk. We do get quite a lot in Louth. And there is a huge demand for tourist information. Tourist information centres have all been closed down effectively since March the 23rd. I know that our museum isn't giving out tourist information because of the fear of people picking up leaflets and passing something on. There's also, I've noticed in the church, they haven't got their leaflets up either. I don't know if that's because East Lindsey have taken them out or quite what. But people asked, I was actually stopped by a resident from my ward today in the church who said, oh, people keep coming and asking for maps, and, you know, could we get some maps somewhere, and all the rest of it. So I think there's a side to it that COVID has probably amplified. It's really important that people do like pieces of paper in their hands, and we really need to be able to work on that as well. And so, you know, there are other strands to it that we need to be getting on with, which COVID has really sort of brought out a lot more. I know that I've been talking to Karen in tourism. We're producing a Louth Heritage leaflet. It's very nice, but where's it going to go? Not everybody wants to look at it on a mobile phone or on their computer. And pieces of paper are really important as well. So we mustn't forget about the practical side of tourism as well as the theoretical side. Thank you.
Councillor Howard, please.
Thank you, Chair. I thank Councillor Parkin for crediting me with coming up with this phrase tourism proofing. But I just want to pick a couple of little examples. Perhaps, you know, when we're making a decision about where we put a waste bin, how often we empty the same bin, or how often we tend to flower beds, or even when we're considering the toilet opening hours. Yeah. Perhaps we don't think of what the knock-on effects would be to tourists who are visiting this area. You know, the law of unintended consequences. And I do think that we've just been discussing that we need the thread of carbon management running through our reports. And I think this was an important point, that we should, as we are the leading district for tourism in Lincolnshire, we should have due consideration in every decision that we make about what impact we have on this vital industry we have.
Councillor Ashton, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. East Lindsey, a great place to visit, a great place to live. These are words that I have always dreamed of seeing one day on a billboard on the London Underground, as we have so much that we can advertise, so much that we can promote in East Lindsey. And I've stood as I've thought this thought when I've been stood on an underground platform in the days before COVID, that if I was a regular commuter and that was the slogan, then that would appeal to me. And it's music to my ears or to my eyes to read it in this report at page 174. And also to note that East Lindsey needs to play an important role in tourism development as a facilitator of growth and by encouraging private sector investment. I'm quite happy to give an absolute commitment from the planning policy team that we are actively and ceaselessly looking at ways in which we can make planning policy support the aims and initiatives that are suggested in this report. And to echo what Councillor Kirk has just said, that every village, every bed and breakfast has a genuine role to play. Because if private individuals are prepared to make investments in our tourism economy and promote the investments that they are making, then that is every bit as powerful, if not more powerful, than any advertising budget that we could collectively put together as a district council. Fantastic as our advertising invariably tends to be. And what we have a paper coming to planning policy in December that looks to rebalance our interpretation around things like SP15, which is highly restrictive. It gets us tripping over sustainability, it gets us tripping over whether there's a footpath between a high quality, small scale, fantastic development and a nearby village. This after trying to attract people to East Lindsey from all corners of Lincolnshire and indeed the rest of the country. And if you think about it, in Lincolnshire, in terms of landscape tourism, there are the wolds, there is the coast, there are the fens, and then there's the Vale down in the southwest. Well, we've got half of the wold, we've got the coast, we've got half of the fens, we've got a pretty big chunk of all of the fantastic landscapes that there are available in Lincolnshire, right here in East Lindsey. And just to ourselves, I know Ely and March and other places will dispute what I'm about to say, but we have the Queen of the Fens, the capital of the Fens, the ancient capital of the Fens in Boston, just to our southern border. So we've got all of this going on, and I wholeheartedly endorse the recommendation, particularly a destination management organisation for Lincolnshire. But I'm prepared to give an absolute commitment from the planning policy team that we will endeavour to support the aspirations that are set out here, and certainly make sure that we're not getting in the way of what Councillor Grist and Councillor Kirk wish to achieve, along with everyone else, for this fantastic district.
Thank you. Councillor Fiona Martin, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just in reply really to Councillor Kirk, I'm quite happy that any recommendation or any piece of work is revisited as and when the overview committee feel it's necessary. We do have a recommendation tracker, which is on the agenda at every meeting, where any member of the committee can ask for updates or question anything on any of the recommendations. So there is a mechanism there for anybody to take anything up that they feel maybe isn't moving forward in the right direction. And as I said earlier in the meeting, when we were looking at the overview annual report, it would be extremely helpful if chairman of any panels actually came forward with suggestions for review of any particular piece of work under their chairmanship that would benefit for review in light of COVID. So I think we've got the mechanisms in place, but I'm always quite prepared to be flexible about revisiting things. Thank you.
Councillor Danny Brooks, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've read the report and I was just wondering why there was no mention of the lack of illuminations that we have in Skegness. I see Mablethorpe's illuminations are in there, but Skegness's lack of illuminations, which I've been asked several times over the season by visitors to our town, what's happened to your illuminations? Can anybody enlighten me?
Came out at the scrutiny.
Okay, we go back to Sarah Parkin, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the comments. Really do appreciate the feedback. I think kind of dealing with what Councillor Grist and Councillor Kirk said, in kind of together really, it is about moving forward and it's about momentum. And if we are going to have success in terms of a destination management or organisation, then that forward movement and that forward momentum is really, really important. And that was what this scrutiny report hoped to generate. I think it was interesting what Steve said, in that it is a very complex area. And I think coming up with 6 recommendations was actually quite tricky. We didn't want to come up with too many. And we did want to keep the recommendations very strategic and not get too bogged down in the operational issues. But I think within those, Steve is right to highlight that, in fact, some of those recommendations are complex and are going to be tricky and are going to require complex and detailed work streams. But the good news is that many of them are already in place. In terms of comments that have been made about how it's reviewed, if you look at recommendation 6, that recommendation is that overview committee as a whole have a responsibility for the public realm strategy and the scrutiny of that. So we were mindful of that from the get-go. So that is built in. And I think some of the decision making in terms of, for example, in terms of a DMO, would obviously need to be going through exec board and then open to the relevant scrutiny at the time. And so this isn't a piece of work that is finite. This is the beginning of a process, and we are at the beginning of a process. In terms of Councillor Makerton Saunders' comments and Councillor Brooks, Danny, I understand your concern about the illuminations in Skegness. The reason that the Mablethorpe issue was dealt with was because that was a decision where we felt that the exec board portfolio holders hadn't got sight of the operational decision making that was going on, and that they needed that. And so really that was what then fed into the idea of the tourism proofing decision making moving forward. That is obviously an operational decision. Jill, paper, maps, paper newsletters is very much an operational decision that is outside the remit of scrutiny when we are meant to be looking at policy and strategy. Tony is absolutely right in terms of the unintended consequences of decision making, and that really does fuel the tourism proofing concept of the report. Councillor Ashton, what comes across in your comments most is your enthusiasm and your aspirations for East Lindsey. And I think that was probably the most defining feature of all of the witnesses that came to us, was their enthusiasm for East Lindsey as an area, but also for us as a panel. And I think it's that feeling, that sense of pride in East Lindsey, love of East Lindsey and pride in the place that we live in, that will really stay with me. And there is the point in the report that I want to really pull out at this moment, with that sense of place firmly in mind, that if an area is a good place to visit, it will also be a good place to live in. And so we do have the synergy of the development of place being good, not just for our visitors, but also for our residents as well. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Before we go to item 10, I'll call for a 5-minute comfort break. Please be back in 5 minutes. Thank you.
question for Michelle. Hi, it's Danny. I've got to not take part in this next item. What do I do on the? Do I just switch the camera off, or just not speak, or do I leave the meeting and come back?
No, Anne should be able to. Oh, sorry, I'm getting feedback there. Anne should be able to let you go, or Elaine. Elaine, will you do that?
Yeah, I can put him in. You'll be returning to the meeting, Councillor Brooks. Will
Yeah.
you? Yeah. Put him in the waiting room and then readmit him.
That's lovely. Thank you very much, Elaine.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Michelle.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I think I best declare an interest on item 10 as well. Just with obviously my dad having a business down the beach, probably best that I also, get put in the waiting room for that part.
Oh, okay
Yeah.
then.
Thank
If
you.
I may, I think that's a very good idea. Could I just suggest that when we're formally back into session again, Mr. Chairman, could you just invite Billy back in so that he can say it's just occurred to him that he's got an interest, and then that becomes declared at the earliest opportunity on the agenda. Then the minutes will reflect that, so that it's transparent, because otherwise no one will know why he's left, because we've done it here.
What? Danny Brooks, Councillor Danny Brooks.
No, because Danny's already declared his.
All right. Yeah.
It's Billy's got to come in. So, Billy, if you just say, Mr. Chairman, can I come in?
Yeah.
And then-
Are we? Yeah.
Yeah. And then, Mr. Chairman, you can invite Billy in, and then Billy, you can say, I've got an interest in item 10.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
I should think we can go back now. Okay, everyone okay? We'll start off again. Just before we start, could I just say that in 15 minutes time, we've been going 2 hours. I take it that everybody's happy to continue past the 2-hour mark.
I wouldn't say happy, Chairman. I think.
Yeah, but you know what I mean.
Have a rethink when we get to 3 hours.
All right. Right.
I'll be ready to go then.
Councillor Billy Brooks.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's occurred to me that I should probably declare an interest in item 10 due to my dad having a business down the Skegness seafront. So I think it's best that I get put into the waiting room for that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Right, are we up again? Yeah. Item 10, submission of town investment plans for Mablethorpe and Skegness. To consider the submission of town investment plans, TIP, for both Mablethorpe and Skegness to the Minister for Housing, Communities and Local Government, MHCLG. Appendix to follow. Councillor Steve Kirk, I believe you're presenting this.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, this what you have in front of you today, the two town investment plans, one for Skegness and Mablethorpe, represent a huge amount of work right across this council, not just from the ED department, but right across the council. Officers have been involved, and I would just like to pay tribute to those before I actually get to the recommendations within this report. A fantastic job everybody's done. Those people who've had the opportunity to read these reports, I'm sure you'll agree. I don't think I'm being overly biased when I think they're some of the best reports I've seen come out of this council. I think it's a fantastic piece of work. That's not only just down to the officer team I've mentioned. I'd also like to thank the chairs and the membership of the place reference groups, been vital in bringing together these projects. And of course, every member of the town's board has had a vital role in bringing them all forward. The process that we have to go through is these projects have been approved by the town's board, but as we are the responsible people, we also have to approve them as a council before they can go for submission on the 30th of October. Within each investment plan has what is considered one or two standout projects. Certainly within Mablethorpe, the Centre for Future Living, that is already getting acknowledgement nationally as being something that would like to move forward. So there's also a part of this report where I'll be asking you to approve. It says actually in the report, there's a slight error. It says the exec board are also asked to confirm support for the council's land asset in Stanley Avenue, Mablethorpe. That actually isn't the case. I'm asking the council to approve that land, the value of that land being put in to the town plan as our contribution towards those projects. So some really, really exciting projects there. Very, very fast moving. The officers have had a really difficult job because since the announcement was made, things have changed so quickly. Even slightly the makeup of how this works has changed. But suffice to say, the two investment plans do each have £25 million worth of fantastic projects that I would love the council to be able to support today. So the recommendations you have in front of you are: recommendation 1, that the chief executive, utilising officer delegated powers, will submit to MHCLG the Mablethorpe Town Investment Plan and the Skegness Town Investment Plan as approved by the Connected Coast Board on or before the 30th of October, so basically in 2 days' time. And that the council supports and notes the town investment plans, and this is number 3 is really important, that the council notes that the Chief Executive, Michelle Sachs, in consultation with the leader and the Connected Coast Board Chair and Vice Chair, will make amendments to the town investment plans until submission on the 30th of October to reflect the fast-moving nature of the project's update. And 4, to confirm the public sector land in the council's ownership at Stanley Avenue, Mablethorpe, is available as match funding contribution to support the town's fund investment plan submission, subject to any further decision required to formally align the lands to the Campus of Future Living project by way of freehold disposal or long lease. It then goes in, the report then goes into the reasons behind this, but I think we're all aware that there is up to £25 million available for both towns. This isn't the end of the process. This is the end of the beginning of the process. There's far more to come. After our 2 town investment plans are submitted, there will be an opportunity for government to look at them and draw up heads of terms for projects they'd like to take forward. There'll then be a period of negotiation and finally and fine-tuning of those projects before the funding can actually be drawn down. So this isn't the end of the hard work. This is the end of the first phase of the hard work. Much more hard work will follow. I don't really need to say anything else at this point, Chairman. I'm sure every council has had the opportunity to read the investment plans, and I'm sure that they agree that they're an excellent piece of work, and I do hope that the council is able to support them. Otherwise, there's a lot of work to be done between now and Friday. Thank you very much, Chairman.
You moved it, Chairman.
We're seconder for that, please.
Yes, Chair, Councillor Leonard here. Yeah, I'd like to chair that. Sorry, Chair. So I beg your pardon. I'd like to second that and reserve my right to speak, please. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Now you got your blue hand up as well, Craig. Do you wish to speak on the blue hand?
No, that was just to attract your attention, Chair.
Yeah. Okay, I did see it, but I'll let
Thank you.
Steve carry on. Councillor Ed Mossop, please.
All right, I didn't realise I was first in. Sorry about that.
Well, actually, you're not. I've dropped a clagger, but you carry on. I'll fetch the first person in second.
All right. Okay. Well, I'm very grateful to that. Councillor Kirk, you did say that we had all read these documents, and I wish I had read the Mablethorpe one, and because I didn't receive it actually, unfortunately. But I did read the Skegness one, and I would think the analysis I made on the Skegness one will reflect also the comments on Mablethorpe one when I get to read it. I do suggest it is proofread to start off with. I've spotted a couple of spelling mistakes already on page 32 that spelt furniture with an A, and they've also put something which is called total cost instead of the total cost on page 28. So I think whoever's had a look through this needs to have another look through and make sure it's absolutely right for community and local government department, because we want it to be professional, and it is. It's a great document overall. I'm really pleased with it. To see it in the format that it is. It's an easy read, and as I say, it reads well. If I were to just make some comments, the first thing I'd probably say is when you go through the first few pages, which is setting the context, it is a little bit more negative than it is positive about our coast, and I think that's something we might ought to just look at the balance there on, particularly the SWOT analysis. I accept there are low skills. We do have issues of crime rates and indices of deprivation, and we know that. But if you could encapsulate that in something rather than too many of the negatives and a little bit more of the positives, I would have thought that would have been more useful. And I do sort of ask the question about the SWOT analysis in terms of is it really a threat from a limited digital infrastructure on the coast nowadays? Have we not overcome a lot of that issues with internet and broadband? Because I've certainly overcome my issues, and even though I might be spied upon. I think in total and overall, it's a good document, and I wish it well, and I wish Skegness well, but I really want to see what's happening in Mablethorpe, because that's my favourite town on the coast. Thank you.
Councillor Howard, please.
Well, it was worth letting Councillor Mossop go first, just to hear that from him, I have to say.
I knew you were following me.
I too, believe it or not, have actually not seen the paper copy of the Mablethorpe one. But of course, being involved with the PRG, I've had a good insight into the making of it. And I have to go back to what Councillor Kirk said in introduction. This has been an absolutely fantastic process, a piece of work that I thought from the beginning had written all across it disaster, because with such a short timetable, the opportunity to come up with a bodge job just was the obvious conclusion. We as councillors don't move at this kind of pace, but I'm glad to see that we have a group of officers and committed people from outside the organisation that are able to move at a pace and at a quality, so that a piece of work, or two pieces of work like this come forward. I'm sure they're feeling absolutely stressed as we get right to that deadline, but all power to their elbow, keep going. You're doing a fantastic job on the two towns' behalf. Speaking specifically from the Mablethorpe point of view, there was an absolute plethora of ideas that the public brought forward. And if there's one negative to the pace that's moving, that we're moving at, it is a feeling from some people within the community that their ideas are being overlooked, and how did they fall out of consideration, and how are these particular ideas being chosen to go ahead that are actually going ahead. But I look at this actually as a positive, because as Councillor Kirk said, this is the beginning of the hard work. This is not just £25 million worth of project in itself. It must be viewed as a stepping stone. Once we're starting to engage with people like the universities and medical people that are wanting to come in on the project, then we have got the opportunity to draw more and more people in to more and more projects. And so this shopping list that the people of Mablethorpe have come up with will get attended to as we get into the long-term project after we've gone through this particularly short deadline. And I look on that as a positive. Not as many people would see it as a negative, that things have got thrown out that have got value. I think they are there, and they are things that can be developed subsequently as we move forward. There is, however, I see just one fly in the ointment for Mablethorpe. And I'm calling on anyone within East Lindsey, whether it's Councillor Kirk or Councillor Leyland, to call upon the County Council to drop a decision that they are in the process of making. A letter came through to the Town Council this week to say that after all the time that the Tennyson site has been closed, they are now choosing to seek to dispose of this particular site. Half of it having been reused for educational purposes with the development of the Springwell Academy. The other half, with the main building stands and part of the playing field, they now suddenly decide is the right moment to put this out for sale, with no particular purpose in mind, it would appear from the letter that appeared at the Town Council. This is such a negative message to be sending out at the very time that Mablethorpe has got a really good piece of work going forward to government. How can we justify selling off an asset which would be perfectly useful ongoing if we are to increase the skills and educational side that we've already started in the two main projects, the sports and learning facility and the Centre for Future Living. Where
You've got
else would
30
we go?
seconds, Councillor Howard.
Thank you very much. I'll do my best. Where else would we look for a piece of land to put future developments of education and skills? We have a piece of land dedicated to future educational projects if they were to come forward. And unfortunately, the County Council are choosing to further pile on the agony after closing the school by now choosing to make this a decision to go forward with disposing of the site. Please, Councillor Kirk, Councillor Lane, whoever, please point out the error of their ways and get them to at least stall this process. Thank you.
Time's up, Councillor Howard.
Timed it to perfection then. Thank you.
Councillor David Hall, please.
Okay, both of these documents look absolutely fabulous, but I only received them at about 4 o'clock yesterday, so I haven't had a chance to actually go through them properly. I'm not entirely convinced I can make a decision on these because I haven't had a chance to actually read them.
Right. Are you asking to come back, Councillor Mossop?
Yeah, I'm sorry, in my haste to be first to speak, I missed one other point that I wanted to raise about the content of this, the Skegness one, which I suppose also goes to the one in Mablethorpe. It's about the membership of the Towns Board and the two place reference groups. I know there's lots of key players here in East Lindsey who are members of that. But I know there's also some important members from the private sector who are involved with this and in fact chair some of the groups. And I like the little pen pictures and comments that they have made, but I think it would be quite useful for all of us, as an aside to the information here, to receive some knowledge as to who is actually on the board and who are involved in the two other bits, whatever they're called. But if you could furnish us with that and also perhaps put that as an appendice to these things, I think it would be useful. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Makinson Sanders, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I've only received the Skegness one, and it's sadly it didn't come till about 4 o'clock this afternoon, so I haven't had much time to read it either. I think there's some excellent stuff in the Skegness one, but I actually did go to the Mablethorpe teaching that we had the other day. I couldn't get into the Skegness one because I was a bit late back from an appointment in town. But the Mablethorpe one I thought was really interesting, and it's interesting to see this laid out. And I know this is for lots and lots of money, and I really, really, from the bottom of my heart, hope that you get every penny that you deserve. But it'd be interesting if in future we could have in-depth analyses of our market towns and our other places as well, because I do think they help inform our decision-making, full stop. But that's just an aside, because I've always been, some of the interest in geography, I've always been interested in that. As an ex-editor, I do have to say, just looking very speedily at what's been done, on page 47, I do think it needs a bit of editing, because it's about collaboration. And it says below, we set out details of how we worked with civil society. Very strange expression, but it gets worse in this sentence. And the private sector to develop this TIP. Well, I know TIP is an acronym, but I do think that if I was working in Whitehall, I'd be sniggering all the way when I saw how to develop this TIP, because I do think just make those into town investment plan words and things like that. And I think there are things you can tidy up, because remember, they're going to ministerial departments that are quite sophisticated. So I think you really need to, but it's really interesting to read. I was a bit disappointed. I thought that Skegness had more manufacturing industry that probably could have been mentioned. It's not, and I had a smile as well, that I would never say that I'd go to Mablethorpe and Skegness for culture of a certain sort, but not the sort that necessarily is culture that I would understand as culture. But I think it's tremendous, and they've done really, really well. And given that everybody's working from home and so forth, excellent, jolly good, well done. And let's keep our fingers crossed for a positive from the government about it.
Thank you. Councillor Ashton, please.
Thank you very much. I shall just very briefly say that I'm absolutely convinced that this represents the most exciting opportunity and most exciting, most significant potential inward investment in some of our coastal communities for many, many years, if not ever. And I think it has very clear capacity to be transformational over an period of time. This isn't simply building things for the now. It is delivering facilities, services, which is going to improve the livelihoods and opportunities of people locally, long into the future, generationally, in fact. And I mean, just to pick up on a couple of bits here, which I've had that relate a little bit to my portfolio area. The historic frontages, the shop fronts, the buildings, the facades in Skegness, the design, the illustrations here, I think has huge potential to improve the streetscape, the street scene, and I'm always incredibly passionate to see our built environment looking the best it can, because this is what people see when they come to visit. It's also what people see every time they walk down their own local street. So that's a fantastic, important, vital, exciting project in its own right, and also to note the further education and higher education opportunities that are contained in the Skegness Town Investment Plan, which again look to tackle the long-term challenges we have with the seasonal nature of our coastal economy, and that goes a long way to underpinning the rationale behind the Skegness Gateway project, again, which I have discussed at Executive Board recently. And I think the key with a lot of this is the private sector involvement, the private sector leadership, and also the private sector investment that is looking to come in behind these initiatives. And I think that represents a genuine vote of confidence. People, businesses voting with their wallets to invest and to support and to have confidence in what we're doing here in East Lindsey. I think Councillor Howard has covered Mablethorpe very well, and I'm keen not to simply repeat stuff that colleagues have already said, but both of these town investment plans, all of what is being delivered here with the Connected Coast, has tremendous opportunity to transform the lives of the people that we're here to serve.
David, you're muted.
Yeah, Councillor Leyland, would you wish to speak?
Yes, please, Chair. Thank you. I don't want to pick off any of the points that Councillor Kirk might be mentioning, but I do think I would like to mention some of the points that have been picked up by colleagues. The reality is that this has been a massive collaborative effort with our officers, the private sector, the board, the Towns Fund board, which have done great work in a very short period of time. And picking up Councillor Howard's point, the pace of this, when this was announced and Chief Exec let me know that this was going to happen. On the one hand, a fantastic opportunity, and yet almost thinking it was an insurmountable challenge to get this done in the time that was needed. And of course, we've had to deal with this through COVID. And so great credit to the Towns Fund board, to our officers, to the place reference groups, which made sure that the interests of both Mablethorpe and Skegness have been represented, and to all those community contributors on the government website access for my town, been all crucial in developing these marvellous plans. And I think the PRG chairs, Councillor Helen Matthews for Mablethorpe and Councillor Sid Dennis for Skegness, have done a great job in corralling that. And of course, the private interests, the private investors who are out there, and our public sector partners have brought this all together in a very short time and created something that is quite fantastic. Just picking up on one or two of the points that were made, Councillor Mossop, the SWOT analysis, we had to do a very careful analysis of all the issues that our coastal communities face and have faced over a number of years. And we've had to be brutally honest about these assessments so that when we go to government, they know exactly the issues that our coastal communities are facing in terms of employment challenges, educational challenges, the digital infrastructure that we have or lack of it in certain places is all critical to how this goes forward. And there's this golden thread through this work. Just picking up on the proofreader side of things, we have actually engaged a professional proofreader who will be going through the documents before they're submitted. Sometimes when you go through something that you're very familiar with, you get target fixated and sometimes miss the elements that have been mentioned this evening about grammar and the syntax of the sentences and their ultimate meaning and perception by others. So that will be very carefully done, and the point's well made. Councillor Howard, very pleased to hear your support of this, and I know you've been batting for your community, as with other councils along the coast, for the benefits that this will bring. And we've had a very rare opportunity here to progress a connected coast, which will have massive impacts for the whole of the district and actually for the whole of Lincolnshire, really, because we are a driver in many areas, in terms of tourism and all those things that we know we can do. And the potential of the Centre for Ageing Better is huge. Just on your point about Lincolnshire County Council's potential sale of an asset, this is an issue that could possibly be dealt with by a future potential investment board for the coast. And I know there are some recommendations for what that site could be used for. It's not off the agenda, but it certainly will be making representations to Lincolnshire County Council to look at that favourably. And certainly East Lindsey has put forward a number of assets which we know will be a part of the recommendation this evening. So as a sort of a partial match funding to the process, and we're very happy to do so. It'd be great to see Lincolnshire County Council progressing something along those lines, but those are discussions to be had. So, Councillor McIntyre, it would be great actually if you fully praise something by fully praising it rather than giving praise through slightly damning praise. That would be a welcome change. I might actually fall off my chair when that happens. But overall, a fantastic effort, and so appreciative of everyone's involvement in this, from the chair of the board, Sarah Louise Fairbairn, to all those people that I've already mentioned. And I'm so happy that this council's been able to progress this professionally in good time, and it's something that we look to, hopefully have success with it. But this is ultimately going to be for us to decide. There's been a couple of mentions about papers not being available. Obviously, all members have had briefings, have had access to member briefings, and also electronic versions have been sent prior to the hard copies being sent. But we have a great opportunity tonight, and we should grasp it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kirk, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, I have the opportunity to finish off a few questions that Councillor Laners hasn't done for me. So thank you very much for that. Yeah, let me just repeat something really important. One of the reasons, one of the recommendations is to allow amendments to be made. These documents are not totally complete yet. So yes, there are errors. It was mentioned about the acronym TIP being in there. That has been removed in another version of these documents. So they're still working documents right up to that deadline of the end of this month. There are, you talked to Councillor Mossop, you talked about digital pretty much being sorted. Well, sadly, whilst the titles are connected coast, the coast is still very badly connected. Included in the two areas which are covered by both the Skegness and the Mablethorpe, there are areas of very poor connectivity, and even in Skegness, in the height of summer, the 4G is atrocious because of so many people trying to log onto it. Often it doesn't work, so there's still a lot of bit of work to be done there. Yes, the SWOT is evidence-based, as Councillor Ledlin said. And as for the board members, if you have 5 minutes to go onto connectedcoast.co.uk, which is the website where everything to do with the Connected Coast Board, all the minutes, all the agendas, everything, you'll see a full page of every single member and their background, where they work, whatever. Because currently on the board there are 11 private sector representatives, 7 public sector, and 9 other stakeholders. So you'll get details of every single one of those. So
thank you, that's useful.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Mossop. Councillor Howard, thank you very much for your comments. And I would like it to go noted that on this occasion, I can happily say I agree with everything you say. It probably won't happen again, but on this occasion, I would like that minuted, please. So yeah, thank you very much. Councillor Hall, I'm terribly sorry you don't feel able to support this because the printed documents were late, but the electronic ones weren't. But that's perfectly within your prerogative. As I say, my version of the printed document for Skegness is actually in pieces because there's so much work being done on it still. It's not a nice bound copy like the Mablethorpe one, which I can just show because people haven't seen that. That really is a lovely bound, beautiful document. So it is quality. Councillor Macon-Sanders, as always, your comments are welcomed. And Councillor Ashton, same applies to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So do we go to the vote on this?
I'd be pleased if you did.
Right. Anne, are you going to take the vote?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Not for.
Thank you. Councillor Aldridge.
For. Not for.
Councillor Andrews.
For.
Councillor Ashton.
For.
Councillor Avison.
For.
Councillor Stan Avison.
For.
Councillor Adrian Benjamin.
For.
Councillor Wendy Bowkett.
For.
Councillor Billy Brooks. Or Councillor Billy Brooks, I think, has left the meeting, so he's absent from the vote. Thank you. Councillor Danny Brooks, I believe, has left the meeting, so he's in the waiting room. Councillor Jimmy Brooks.
Unfortunately, I have to leave after this item, but I am voting for. Thank you.
Voting for, thank you. Councillor Trevor Burnham.
For.
Councillor Campbell, Sandra Campbell Wardman.
For.
Councillor Cullen.
For.
Councillor Richard Cunnington.
For.
Councillor Mark Dannett.
For.
Councillor Colin Davey.
For.
Councillor Sid Dennis. Sid
Absent.
Dennis is absent. Thank you. Councillor Sarah Devereux.
For.
Councillor Colin Dickinson is absent. Councillor Dick Edgington.
For.
Councillor Stephen Eyre.
For.
Councillor Martin Foster.
For.
Councillor Richard Fry.
For.
Councillor William Gray.
For.
Councillor Chris Green has left the meeting. Councillor Adam Grist. Councillor Grist. I'll come back to Councillor Grist. Councillor Will Grover.
For.
Councillor Alex Hall.
For.
Councillor David Hall.
With the trust I have in my fellow councillors, I will be voting for.
Councillor Sandra Harrison. Councillor Sandra Harrison.
For.
Councillor Paul Hibbert Greaves.
For.
Councillor George Horton.
For.
Councillor Tony Howard.
For.
Councillor Ros Jackson.
For.
Councillor Neil Jones.
For.
Councillor Thomas Kemp.
For.
Councillor Steve Kirk.
For.
Councillor Terry Knowles. Councillor Knowles. Councillor Knowles not it seems to be absent. Councillor Leonard.
For.
Councillor Leyland.
For.
Councillor Mackinson Sanders.
Yes, for.
Councillor Manjon.
For.
Councillor Marsh.
For.
Councillor Martin.
For.
Councillor Macmillan is absent. Councillor McNally.
For.
Sorry, I've missed off Councillor Matthews. I do beg your pardon, Councillor Matthews.
For.
Thank you. Councillor McNally, did I just call you? Sorry. Councillor McNally.
Yeah. For.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Mossop.
Yeah. For.
Councillor Newman.
For.
Councillor Parkin.
For.
Councillor Platt.
For.
Councillor Rickett.
For.
Councillor Phil Smith.
For.
Councillor Swanson.
For.
Councillor Turton Levers is absent. Thank you. Just one moment, please, Chairman.
I think you was going to go back to Councillor Grist, Dan. I don't know whether
Thank you,
he's...
Councillor Grist. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Grist.
Yeah, can you hear me now, Anne?
And yeah.
Yeah, for.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. That's carried 47 for absent.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Anne. Right. Item 11, proposed transfer of East Lindsey District Council.
Excuse me, Chair.
Yeah.
You forgot Councillor Mangian again.
No.
Councillor Mangian's name wasn't called out for the vote for the last time.
Yes, it was.
It was.
Well, he
Never
did
heard
vote,
it.
thank you. Yeah, he did vote. He voted for, thank you.
I've got two blue hands up, Councillor David Hall and Councillor Sarah Devereux. Are you wishing to speak?
Yes, please, Chairman. Item 11 obviously is one that I've declared an interest in, and I will be leaving the meeting while you take part, but unfortunately I must give my apologies because I won't be returning.
Okay.
Today.
Thank you. Should we fetch back Danny and Billy Brooks?
Yeah, I'll bring them back in.
Okay, item 11, proposed transfer of East Lindsey District Council's assets to Alford Town Council. To consider the proposal for the transfer of identified schedule of council-owned assets from East Lindsey District Council, ELDC, to Alford Town Council, ATC. Councillor Fry, I believe you're proposing this.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm sure you've all read the paper, and since time is not on our side, I'm going to summarise my summary. This transfer is part of the Council's Asset Management Framework Transformation Programme, which identifies assets which can be better managed at a local level. And I'm sure you're familiar with this concept. In this case, we're talking about Alford. Alford Town Council and ELDC have discussed this at some length and achieved agreement on it. And therefore, the paper recommends the transfer of an approved schedule of assets. I think the salient points as far as councils are concerned probably are A, that the total value of the assets proposed for transfer is £366,000, which is obviously in excess of the 300,000, and therefore it is a council decision. However, they're considered by us to have limited strategic value. For my money, they're part of the public estate, and it matters not whether Alford are in control of them or we are. And I think that, as the paper has already said, they're better in control than we are. The transfer proposal also includes a grant of £9,750 towards the initial running costs, and this for the public convenience, and tapers off over 3 years, and was again agreed with the Town Council. The package of assets, if transferred to Alford Town Council, will result in a loss of £4,418 of revenue surplus per annum, which we need to take into consideration. And subsequently, that will result in a budget pressure in the first year of £9,293 when taking into account the revenue support grant of £4,875 in the first year. The budget pressure reduces to the figure of £4,418 by year 4, and in theory remains that way, although I think that in reality we won't be noticing it much after that. However, given that the transfer meets the objectives of the asset management framework and the assets have limited strategic value, the transfer is considered to represent an acceptable mid to long-term outcome for ELDC, as the paper indicates, and is recommended for approval. So formally speaking then, the proposal is that Council approve the transfer of the identified schedule of assets to Alford Town Council as detailed in the report, and that we make available a total grant of £9,750 to Alford Town Council over 3 years, and to support the operations of the toilets. And I think that from that point of view, that's all I want to say. So I recommend to Council that these recommendations are approved for implementation. Thank you.
Have we a seconder for that, please?
Yeah, I'll second that one, Chairman Graham Marsh.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Phil Smith, please.
It's good to see that we're, thank you, Chair. It's good to see that we're reallocating bits of the public estate to those places where it's best managed. But I would like to point out in the section 7 of this report, there is a section on carbon reduction impact and implications. And it says that there are none. These are assets which, from their description, I assume have lighting and heating implications. This is carbon which is currently included in our carbon footprint, and we can't just outsource our carbon. You know, we can't privatize it away. There's no genuine net reduction there as a result. So we need to consider this, and it needs to be part of the way in which we divest things to parish councils, as is mentioned on page 14 of the scrutiny report. And this is typical of why we need that recommendation 4 of training in carbon literacy for the people who write these reports. Thank you very much.
Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points and a question. It's very good to see in the report that Alford Town Council requested the transfer of the list of items that are in the report, and it's good to see that we've responded positively to that. I then have a question over the mention in 1.4 of an 80-year restrictive covenant with clawback. 80 years seems a long time to be clawing back when the enhancement or the development of these projects will, in the main, have been done by the Alford Town Council. And I just wondered why such an extended term. And from the conversation, I was going to say agreed, but it would imply that it was actually imposed rather than fully agreed by both parties. And I just wondered, I would like some explanation of that 80-year period. And finally, I see that there's talk of some bits and pieces not being included because they're being classed as ransom patches. But if there'd been a map with the report, that might have been so much easier to understand by someone who's not actually in the parish of Alford, to see what the implications of those particular areas would be. Thank you, Chair. That's all I wanted to bring up.
Councillor Makinson Sanders, please.
Oops, Daisy, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't going to be a turkey voting for Christmas, and I just would like Councillor Fry to explain to me where I find the framework for the strategic assets, because I'm not really sure where those all are, and perhaps he could explain to me, because also I'm going to follow Councillor Howard. I do think sometimes these reports need to be written so the public understands them, and I had to look up what an overage clause was, which overage. Yeah, I understood it once I'd googled it, but you know, a member of the public would have to do exactly the same, and I thought we were meant to be a plain English council. But perhaps if you could just explain to me what are the framework of our strategic assets are, I then will ensure I'm not a turkey voting for Christmas. And when we've got rid of all of our assets, what are we left to do? We're not going to do that. That's all right. You explain it to me.
Councillor Craig Leyland, please.
Mr. Chairman, I've nothing to add. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Ashton, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Before I move to the point that I would wish to make substantively, I will pick up on the comment that Councillor Smith has raised. And I mean, I'll say that while we, of course, need to take our responsibilities seriously, as a council, we have to be mindful that we don't allow these things to become some kind of obsession. And actually, I agree with the point at the report at point 7, that the impact on carbon is not going to be material 1 iota handing this over, these assets over to Alford Town Council. Whatever the carbon impact is going to be, it's going to remain exactly the same. And I'd feel confident in saying hand on heart that no polar bears will be harmed by this report. No, not a single polar bear anywhere on the planet will be any worse off by Alford Town Council looking after these assets. And I come back to the substantive point I was going to make, is it is really good to see the concept of one public estate, that concept being put into practice. And I'm delighted that as a council, we are continuing what we have done over the last 2 or 3 years and vesting the assets that belong to a community with the organisation which are best placed to manage them, best value for money, closest to the people that use them. And as a parish councillor of some 13 years now, I can say hand on heart that unencumbered, as parish councils invariably tend to be, by some of the procurement policies that we have to work to as a principal tier local authority, they can deliver a value for money for some of these assets with which we genuinely struggle. And I'm really pleased that we're no longer taking the view that somehow these are our assets and we must hang on to them for grim death. If it wasn't, if 1973 and 1974 local government reorganisation had been done a little bit better, these are assets which rightfully would have belonged to the parish or the preceding urban or rural district council anyway. So they're effectively returning to where they probably should have been all along. And I'm delighted that we have such an open-minded, optimistic an inclusive view of the district council, and long may Alford and the assets that we are proposing to hand over here prosper.
Councillor Danny Brooks, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Councillor Ashton has basically summed up what I was going to say. I think it's high time that this council issued back when a parish council wants the assets. I think this council should do all they can to let them have them back. So echo what Councillor Ashton said basically, and I think it's a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Phil Smith, you've had one go. I'll let you go very quick to ask one question.
I wanted partially to say, if I appeared to in any way be insincere when I said that this transfer of assets was a good idea, I was entirely sincere there. So if you took me, didn't take me up my word there, Tom, then I clearly wasn't clear. But the key issue here is that in transferring these assets, we can devolve our assets, but we can't devolve our responsibility for getting rid of that carbon. We need to include that in what we provide to the parish council so they can then decarbonise that asset. That was the point I was going to make.
Right, thank you. Councillor Neil Jones, please.
Hello there. I might be a little naive with this one. And so if we transfer this to Alford, could they actually sell it, or would they have to have the opportunity to sell it back to us before they sell it to somebody else? So it is an asset that would be retained within the district.
You'll answer that in a minute. Councillor Marsh, did you want to say anything?
No, Chairman, I think most of the comments have been made. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fry, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Right, I'll start off with Councillor Smith. Your point's well taken, actually. But, however, I think, I'm a simple person, as a lot of people are, and maybe we don't think about this enough. My response is much the same as Councillor Ashton's, that the carbon footprint of these assets remains exactly the same in Alford as it does with us, whether it's with the ELDC or the Town Council. I agree that they need to know what it is if they want to reduce it. And we probably need to know what it is if we were going to keep it and reduce it also. I think it's the report itself is merely saying they don't change. And I think it's fair enough from that point of view. But I do take your point that we do need to be thinking much harder about this in the future. Councillor Howard, thank you for your recognition of this as a positive response. The 80-year clawback clause is a standard clause. We have applied it with other asset transfers in relation to Horncastle, in relation to well, I'm trying to think of one that we have actually finalised now, but also Skegness, and lots of the councils in there have been pushbacks against the clause, but it is a standard clause and it's a normal one to do, and it's for our protection. Right, Councillor Megginson Sanders, you'll find reference to this back in 2016 in the original transformation programme. The current framework documentation resides with the property team, and Andy Fisher is now in charge of that. It would have been Neil Cooksey, and Andy will probably be quite surprised if you ask him about it. We're certainly not disposing of any other assets at this point in time. This is in relation specifically to the thought that Councillor Ashton also pointed out quite correctly, that at the time of a previous reorganisation, a lot of assets weren't thought about very carefully, and they were allocated to areas which really, like ourselves, which don't have such a direct involvement in their utilisation or ability to use them properly. So they're really going back to the right place. I think that's the whole point of this, and it is, as has been said several times, good, and they are part of the one public estate. Then Councillor Ashton, yes, Tom, thank you very much for the comments you made. I do agree with you, and it's the same statement I made back to Councillor Smith about the carbon reduction. The actual carbon footprint, as far as I can tell, is exactly the same whether it's with Alford or with ourselves. But we do need to be very conscious of the fact that the assets probably don't function in the way they would best do, and we have a responsibility towards that. And we've just transferred that to Alford. In fact, I'm not quite sure that after we've transferred it, that we still have a responsibility towards it. That's a point you can argue about, I guess. But as long as we all work together to try and achieve the result that we're all looking for, then I think that's probably fine. Councillor Brooks, yes, thank you very much. You're echoing Councillor Ashton, and thank you for your support in terms of it being a good idea. Councillor Smith, I think I've probably covered, you came back on that point, and I'm glad for your support, I really am. And yes, I think your point, as I say, is well made. And Councillor Jones, yes, we're transferring things to them, they will own them. And apart from the fact that the clawback is in place if an asset were to be sold for a housing estate, and suddenly the value of that, because we've given it a value at this point in time as a function of this initiative, and if suddenly it was sold off for a housing estate, the value would increase vastly, and we'd want to be part of that. So yes, and there is an 80-year periodicity associated with that requirement. Perhaps it'll be revisited later on, but I do have to say that particular facet of this transfer was certainly discussed with the councillors in Alford, and the way it's being done was agreed with them. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. With Councillor Michael Sanders, Danny Brooks and Phil Smith, please take your blue hands down. Okay, Anne, over to you for the vote.
Thank you, Chairman. So, Councillor Terry Aldridge.
For.
Councillor David Andrews.
For.
Councillor Tom Ashton.
For.
Councillor Richard Avison.
For.
Councillor Stan Avison.
For.
Councillor Adrian Benjamin.
For.
Councillor Wendy Bowkett.
For.
Councillor Billy Brooks.
For.
Councillor Danny Brooks.
For.
Councillor Jimmy Brooks.
He's left the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Trevor Burnham.
For.
Councillor Campbell Wardman.
For.
Councillor Graham Cullen.
For.
Councillor Richard Cunnington.
For.
Councillor Mark Dannett.
4.
Councillor Colin Davey.
4.
Councillor Sid Dennis is absent. Councillor Sarah Devereux is
Left the
absent.
meeting. Yeah.
Yeah. Councillor Colin Dickinson is absent. Councillor Dick Edgington.
4.
Councillor Stephen Eyre.
4.
Councillor Martin Foster.
4.
Councillor Richard Fry.
4.
Councillor William Gray.
4.
Councillor Chris Green has left the meeting. Councillor Adam Grist.
4.
Councillor Will Grover.
4.
Councillor Alex Hall.
4.
Councillor David Hall.
4.
Councillor Sandra Harrison.
4.
Councillor Paul Hibbert Greaves.
4.
Councillor George Houghton.
4.
Councillor Tony Howard.
4.
Councillor Ros Jackson.
4.
Councillor Neil Jones.
4.
Councillor Thomas Kemp.
4.
Councillor Steve Kirk.
4.
Councillor Terry Knowles. Councillor Knowles has left the meeting. Thank you. Councillor Andrew Leonard.
4.
Councillor Craig Leyland.
4. Thank you.
Councillor Jill Makinson Sanders.
Yes, 4. Support.
Thank you. Councillor David Manjon.
4.
Councillor Graham Marsh.
4.
Councillor Fiona Martin.
4.
Councillor Helen Matthews.
4.
Councillor Steve McMillan is absent. Councillor Daniel McNally.
4.
Councillor Edward Mossop, I think, has left the meeting. Councillor Mossop's left.
No, I haven't. I'm
You
still
are
here.
left. Sorry, you
Yeah,
are there.
I'm-
Beg your pardon. Councillor
Yeah,
Edward
yeah,
Mossop
yeah.
is 4. Thank you.
4.
Councillor
4.
Claire Newman.
4.
Councillor Sarah Parkin.
4.
Councillor Julie Platt. 4. Councillor Paul Rickett.
4.
Councillor Phil Smith.
4.
Councillor Jim Swanson.
I abstain, but I would like to see Spilsby given the same consideration.
Thank you. Councillor Turton Levers is absent. Bear with me a moment, please, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. That's carried 46 in favour, 9 absent or abstained.
Right, thank you. Item 12 on the agenda is fleet maintenance. To consider a recommendation to release £460,000 from the repairs and renewals reserve to be added to the capital programme to finance the purchase of refuse collection vehicles and the workshop setup cost. Councillor Martin Foster, I believe you're presenting.
Thank you, Chairman. On the 30th of September, the Executive Board approved a recommendation to bring the repairs and maintenance of the Council's fleet in-house from the 1st of April 2021. This will ensure the Council's fleet is properly maintained to meet the legal requirements of the Council's Goods Vehicle Operators Licence, and that these maintenance arrangements are in place, ready for the 1st of April 2021. A little bit of background. Our current contractor has given notice to quit on the 1st of April next year, and we cannot legally run the HGV fleet without a maintenance arrangement in place. Full details of this arrangement have to be sent to the Traffic Commissioner before the 1st of April next year. Without such an arrangement, our HGVs will not be allowed onto the public highway. Throughout the summer, we have gone through a tender process to identify a fleet maintenance contractor. This has not been successful, unfortunately, and the risk of going back out to tender at this late stage would mean further delays and the possibility that we wouldn't be able to attract another contractor to bid in this, what is becoming a specialist field. I'd already discussed the possibility of taking these services in-house prior to going out to tender, and it was decided that if we started planning and preparation now, it would give us 6 months to get things ready to provide our own in-house service. We're able to continue to use the current workshop on Fairfield Road Industrial Estate in Louth after an agreement was negotiated with the County Council, who own the workshop, to take on the lease. The fixtures and fittings in place in the workshop are owned by the current fleet maintenance contractor, and the council can either negotiate with them to purchase these fittings, or if better value for money, can purchase the new equipment themselves. Using calculations supplied by the Association of Public Service Excellence, it is anticipated that the workshop setup costs will be £92,500. With this, we're also requesting £360,000 to purchase 2 new refuse collection vehicles. These vehicles will provide cover for our current fleet of 20 vehicles when they're taken out of frontline service for servicing. The 2 additional vehicles will allow a rotation of vehicles to ensure we can continue to empty 85,000 wheeled bins each week. Please note that available vehicles on the procurement list will be subject to a price increase at the end of this week. So no pressure, ladies and gentlemen. The capital costs requested will allow this authority to set up a first-class in-house fleet maintenance workshop, and in doing so will assist in the control of our own maintenance costs and possibly offer up opportunities in providing commercial services and contracts to other organisations in the future. I hope you will be able to support this report, and I'd like to recommend it to the Council this evening. Thank you. I think you're on
mute, David.
Right. Have I seconded for that, please?
Yes, I'm happy to second this, Chairman, and I reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Makinson Sanders, please.
Well, this is a really valuable service, much appreciated by our residents, and I would hate to see us not be able to fulfil it. I'm a bit worried that you say there's 85,000 wheeled bins collected every week, because I have bags, so I hope you'll still continue to pick up my bags. But it's, you go ahead with it. We can't not have our dustbins emptied and well thought out. And if in future the climate changes, then it can go back to private enterprise if you so wish. But I'd also like to see, and I'm sure you can put it into your new way of working as well, that perhaps we could have some apprenticeships for young people working in the facility as well. So there's lots of opportunities, and good luck to you. Let's hope it works well. Thank you.
Councillor Howard, please.
Thank you. Just one very quick question, because I wish I'd thought of the apprenticeship idea first, but I've been scuppered on that. And that is just to say that at section 2.1 says there are no other options. Now, we're just entering into the alliance, and our partners in that have a collection responsibility. And I just thought that it's odd that we didn't consider talking to them. They may not have the ability to help us out, but I was just concerned that the report is silent on that. It's neither said we looked at it nor we didn't look at it. It just doesn't mention it, and we, I think it's an avenue we should have looked at, and I wondered why.
Councillor Steve Kirk, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. Echoing the thoughts of Councillor Makin-Sons and Councillor Howard, I've already spoken to Martin about having apprenticeships in with what we do. It's the other side of my portfolio is training and skills, and I would have liked to have seen that written into a report, a commitment from this council that when we do take on that direct labour, we also start training and upskilling. Where else in the area can you learn to be an HG fitter? When you look at the amount of lorries that are trundling up and down our roads, that is a valuable skill that we could pass on to future generations. So if there was anything I would like to add to this report, it would just be that commitment to training and skill for our local workforce.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Phil Smith, please.
Thank you, Chair. At the risk of sounding like a stuck record, one of the things in the carbon scrutiny report, it goes on at length about the waste fleet, and I think we should really look at this as a real opportunity. I think it's great that we're taking this back in-house. I think many of our services are better off in-house anyway, but here, as the council moves towards electric vehicles and so on, this is absolutely somewhere where we can act as a gatekeeper, where we can encourage the development of servicing technologies and servicing skills in electric and other low carbon technologies. This is absolutely somewhere where we can give young people new skills and existing mechanics new skills, and we can absolutely lead and sell those skills to other organisations as well within the HGV fleet across Lincolnshire. I think this is a great opportunity as a potential green opportunity. I was very scared when we were sending this contract out that we might end up locking ourselves into a contract which would be all diesel, and this is absolutely the thing that can set us free from that, and give us agency over the types of vehicles that we bring in, and I wholeheartedly support it. Thank you.
Councillor David Mannion, please.
Thank you very much. I think Phil Smith beat me to it, but I would hope that this would give us a strategy to further reduce our carbon footprint with the heavy vehicles. So I would support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry, Jill, I can't let you have another go. We got too much
I was
to
only
get through yet.
Mr. Chairman, I was going to second Councillor Kirk's addition to the recommendations. That's what I put my hand up for, because I thought it was a very sensible addition.
Okay, right, we move on. Councillor Paul Rickett, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A lot of things have already been said that I was going to mention, but having done a little bit of research into the refuse wagons on behalf of a constituent, these are some of the most efficient wagons that are available on the market, and I think purchasing some more of them makes a good step forward on our CO2 and carbon footprint, and very happy to support it.
Thank you. Councillor Fry, do you wish to say anything?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The only observation I have, and I really want to say this from the finance side, is that this is about placing the authority in control of its own destiny. It's a significant investment, but it's just that, an investment in the future which will empower the authority to operate its vehicles in the most cost-effective way. And I really want to support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Martin Foster. Where is he? Councillor Martin Foster.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I hadn't unmuted. My apologies.
That's all right. I've done it.
Thank you, everyone, for your support. Councillor Makinson Sanders, especially much appreciated with the apprenticeships and everyone else that's mentioned that in the workforce. Obviously, as this sort of service settles in, we'll have a better idea of the amount of staffing levels that we have. We're looking hopefully to take on a fleet workshop manager. And at that point, if we can offer out any commercial opportunities, we will probably be looking at upskilling all of our staff. And that will possibly involve apprenticeships where we can take on the right level of people that we need to do the job. As Councillor Kirk has said, these are skilled trades. They're welcome in the area and obviously something that we will take into account when this is bedded in and we're working forward and getting a better idea of how things are. Councillor Howard, section 2.1, we have spoken to Boston Borough Council and talked about the logistics of moving vehicles to specific workshops. Of course, you realise there's a 40-mile journey from Boston up to Louth at the moment. And this would mean that we'd be taking vehicles on a regular basis up and down the roads to the various workshop locations. And it was decided that we will probably be better at this point in time, keeping those separated. And Boston Borough Council have got a contract in place which is running, so they wouldn't be able to get out of that. So that's why we've gone our own way. Councillor Smith noted on the fleet management and the responsibility to reduce our carbon footprint. We're looking at the grander picture on this when vehicles are being replaced. I'm aiming to work with the officers to look especially at the smaller vehicles with response to changing those to electric. Again, Councillor Ricketts mentioned that the vehicles we use for the refuse collection at the moment are Euro 6 category. They're some of the best vehicles that we can purchase at this time to do the job that we need to do. We would have limitations with some of the other technologies, but we will keep those in mind as the technical side of things moves on. Councillor Mangan, more control. We'll have everything brought under better control when we're looking after it ourselves. And this will give us the opportunity to look at these carbon controls. And as I say, if we get a manager who's responsible and has the time, we can dedicate this sort of effort to looking at our carbon footprints in the future and making sure that we invest in the right vehicles for the jobs at the time. I don't think there are any more questions, but again, I would just ask for your support this evening. I think it's an exciting time. I think taking these in-house will protect this authority from what could be quite considerable spike in prices if any other third-party contractor comes into this equation again. They will be specialists, they will be limited, and that will come at a price. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Over to you, Anne, for the vote.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Terry Aldridge.
For.
Councillor David Andrews.
For.
Councillor Tom Ashton.
For.
Councillor Richard Avison.
4.
Councillor Stan Avison.
4.
Councillor Adrian Benjamin.
4.
Councillor Wendy Bowkett.
4.
Councillor Billy Brooks.
4.
Councillor Danny Brooks.
4.
Councillor Jimmy Brooks is absent. Councillor Trevor Burnham. Councillor Burnham.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Sandra Campbell Wardman.
4.
4.
Councillor Graham Cullen.
4.
Councillor Richard Cunnington.
4.
Councillor Mark Dannett.
Philadelphia. Well, Arizona is a key swing
Just
state.
before I vote for on this, Mr. Chairman, could I just advise you that I will be reducing my carbon footprint and leaving after this agenda item.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Colin Davey.
4.
Councillor Sid Dennis is absent. Councillor Sarah Devereux.
He's
left.
He's left.
Gone. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Colin Dickinson is absent. Councillor Dick Edgington.
4.
Councillor Stephen Eyre.
4.
Councillor Martin Foster.
4.
Councillor Richard Fry.
4.
Councillor William Gray.
4.
Councillor Chris Green has gone. Councillor Adam Grist.
4.
Councillor Will Grover.
4.
Councillor Alex Hall.
4.
Councillor David Hall.
4.
Councillor Sandra Harrison.
4.
Councillor Paul Hibbert Greaves.
4.
Councillor George Horton.
Fallen in the river.
Councillor Horton.
Sorry, I did say 4, but
Sorry,
Go on.
I didn't hear you. Thank you very much, Councillor Horton. Councillor
Okay.
Tony Howard.
4.
Councillor Ros Jackson.
4.
Councillor Neil Jones.
yeah, 4. And I do think, Chairman, that councillors should be visible during this vote. Several of them aren't.
Councillor Thomas Kemp.
4.
Councillor Steve Kirk.
4.
Councillor Terry Knowles has left the meeting. Councillor Andrew Leonard.
4.
Councillor Craig Leyland.
4.
Councillor Jill Makinson Sanders.
4.
Councillor Graham Marsh.
4.
Councillor Manjonan.
Councillor David Manjon.
4.
Councillor Fiona Martin.
4.
Councillor Helen Matthews.
4.
Councillor Daniel McNally.
4.
I should say Councillor Steve Macmillan is absent. I've noted that. Councillor Edward Mossop.
4.
Councillor Claire Newman.
4.
Councillor Sarah Parkin.
4.
Councillor Julie Platt.
4. I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave the meeting now.
Councillor Paul Rickett.
4.
Councillor Phil Smith.
4.
Councillor Jim Swanson.
4.
And Councillor Mel Turton Levers is absent. Thank you, Chairman. Just one moment, please. Thank you, Chairman. That's carried. That was 47 for, 8 absent or abstentions.
Yeah, thank you. Right. Item 13, political proportionality to consider a revised allocation of seats for council committees and proposed group appointments to these seats. Councillor Leyland.
Thank you, Chair. The report is as it is. I have not too much to add. The recommendation is that the allocation of seats is detailed as Appendix A to the report, and the group appointments to those as detailed in Appendix B be approved. And the reason for this is to maintain in accordance with political proportionality requirements as set out in the Local Government and Housing Act 1989 and the Local Government Committees and Political Groups Act Regulations 1990. Due to the recent move of council to our group, it's necessitated this, and it's created a vacancy in the licensing committee, which we would like to see filled by Councillor Adrian Benjamin. So that's as it's presented, Mr. Chairman. I think we can hopefully curb a debate on this and see what happens. Thank you.
Okay. Have we a seconder, please?
Yes, I'll second this one. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Makinson-Sanders.
Well, it's a point of order, actually, Mr. Chairman. I will hold up my iPad for you here because I'm very confused about Councillor Parkin, to tell you the truth, because it quite clearly says on her declaration of interest that she's a member of the Labour Party. So I don't know why we're changing some of the things. That hasn't been done. And I would point out that it's a criminal offence to knowingly or recklessly provide false or misleading information. And this attracts a fine of £5,000 and disqualification from holding office as a councillor for up to 5 years. This Councillor Parkin has known she's joined the Conservative Party for more than 28 days now, and she had 28 days to change her what she's put on here. It still says she's a member of the Labour Party. So I'm sorry, I won't certainly be supporting that, because it is beholden on all of us as councillors to obey the law of the land.
Councillor Howard, please.
Chair, thank you. There is several items here that have been dealt with, but there does seem to be an item missing from the report, and that is how we deal with the vice chair position on the overview committee. The constitution quite clearly covers how we deal with the election of the chair, but in the past we have gone that little step further to promote the democratic process by ensuring that the vice chair, who may be sitting in some time for the chair, is also from an opposition part of the council. And this has been something that we've, for a long, long time, upheld, this democratic principle. So therefore, I'm concerned as to why there is no mention of this pending resignation from this post and how it's being dealt with. Surely this principle is one that is worth holding on to. And we're talking of principles. I know that both the presenter of the report and the individual concerned are both very principled people. And in fact, I can recall Councillor Parkin arguing this very point from the opposite side of the chamber. As both are highly principled individuals, why has the opportunity been missed to announce to the council the retention of this practice of a good, in fact, an exemplar democratic procedure, and put in place the opportunity mid-term to sort out the management of that committee? Thank you.
Councillor Sarah Parkin, please.
Just in terms of Councillor Makinson-Saunders' accusation, she's in fact wrong. I attended my first group meeting last week. So I am still within the 28-day period, and that is something that is ongoing in a process I'm well aware of. In terms of the overview position, I have had discussions with Councillor Leyland, and again, that is a process that I am assured is ongoing and has been referred to Democratic Services to resolve. So I'm really at a loss with both issues having been raised at full council, and I would really have expected that if Councillor Makinson-Saunders had been aware of that, that really a quick email to check would have been a far better recourse of action than bringing it up in full council, because it's a very minor administrative process.
It's not.
It's an important one,
law.
Jill, but it's one that
sorry,
can be very easily
Hold
resolved.
on.
Which we're doing this.
Okay. Are you finished, Councillor Parkin?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Councillor Ashton, please.
I would just say that I'm deeply saddened by this sort of outpouring of sour grape from one or two councillors across the chamber. And I think it's sort of demeaning the tone of the meeting that we're enjoying this evening. And I would hope that they would reflect on their points.
Thank you. Councillor Marsh, do you wish to say anything?
At this stage, no, Chairman, thank you.
Right, okay, Councillor Leyland, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I wasn't expecting that, but there we go. Such is life. Councillor Makinson-Saunders, you've heard from Councillor Parkin. It will be amended, I'm sure, the interest page. And again, I think it is a little bit of a shame that you couldn't have just checked with Councillor Parkin to clarify that before you mentioned it at full council. But there we go. Councillor Howard, yes, I am principled, and I know that Councillor Parkin is principled, and indeed so yourself. So the reality is the Constitution does say that the chairman of Overview should be gifted to an opposition councillor. And we have, since 2015, under my leadership, made it that the deputy chairman is also an opposition councillor. And this is actually a matter for the Overview Committee to sort out in terms of who is chair and who is vice chair. And it is not my intention to change the policy that I have instigated through practice since 2015. But again, this is a matter for Overview Committee to resolve in terms of who is their vice chair. So on that basis, the paper is before us this evening. I suggest that we go forward and vote on that. We've heard from Councillor Parkin that she's within the 28 days notice period for amending her interest page. And on that basis, I suggest we go forward. But if, Councillor Makinson-Saunders, I think it shows slightly poor faith in how you want to see things done in this council. If you want to raise that now, as I say, I think it should have been raised earlier as a matter of courtesy to Councillor Parkin, rather than trying to not only trip her up on the hurdle, but make sure she falls heavily and injures herself. So,
well, Councillor Leyland, we are the opposition. Remember, we are the opposition.
That's fine.
Hold on. We don't want a free for all.
Well, I believe I'm speaking, Chair, so I have the floor at the moment.
You carry on speaking, Councillor Leyland.
Thank you. So I fully appreciate Councillor Howard's point, and the paper still goes forward, but it is for the Overview Committee to finalise the position of Vice Chair.
Okay. Councillor Parkin, can you take your blue hand down, please? Councillor Leonard and Councillor Marsh, we've finished debating this. We're going to the vote now. Over to you, Anne, for the vote.
Thank you. Councillor Aldridge. Councillor Aldridge. We lost Councillor Aldridge. Councillor Andrews.
For.
Councillor Ashton.
For.
Councillor Richard Averson.
4.
Councillor Stan Avison.
4.
Councillor Adrian Benjamin.
4.
Councillor Wendy Bowkett.
4.
Councillor Billy Brooks.
I am 4.
Councillor Danny Brooks.
4.
Councillor Jimmy Brooks has left the meeting. Councillor Trevor Burnham.
4.
Councillor Sandra Campbell-Wardman.
4.
Councillor Graham Cullen.
4. And can I just announce I believe in the meeting because I'm on a curfew. The pub has to shut at 10 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richard Cunnington.
4.
Councillor Mark Dannett.
He's left the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Colin Davey.
4.
Councillor Sid Dennis is absent. Councillor Sarah Devereux has left the meeting, and Councillor Colin Dickinson is absent. Councillor Dick Edgington.
4.
Councillor Stephen Eyre.
Abstain.
Councillor Martin Foster.
4.
Councillor Richard Fry.
4.
Councillor William Gray.
4.
Councillor Chris Green has left the meeting. Councillor Adam Grist.
4.
Councillor Alex Hall.
Miss Councillor.
4.
I'm sorry, Lane, have I missed somebody?
Councillor Grover.
4. Thank you.
Thank you. Is next on my list. Councillor Grover, thank you. 4. Councillor Alex Hall.
4.
Councillor David Hall.
4.
Councillor Sandra Harrison.
4. And I will be leaving the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Hibbert Greaves.
4.
Councillor George Horton.
Well, my principle is that people shouldn't jump ship half term, so I'm against.
Thank you. Councillor Tony Howard.
4.
Councillor Ross Jackson.
4.
Councillor Neil Jones.
4.
Councillor Thomas Kemp.
4.
Councillor Steve Kirk.
4.
Councillor Terry Knowles has left the meeting. Councillor Andrew Leonard.
Abstain.
Councillor Craig Leyland.
4. Thank you.
Councillor Jill Makinson Sanders.
Abstain.
Councillor David Manjon.
4.
Councillor Graham Marsh.
4.
Councillor Fiona Martin.
4.
Councillor Helen Matthews.
4.
Councillor Steve McMillan is absent. Councillor Daniel McNally.
4.
Councillor Edward Mossop.
Abstain.
Councillor Claire Newman.
4.
Councillor Sarah Parkin.
4.
Councillor Julie Platt.
Left the meeting.
I think she's left.
She's gone, thank you. Councillor Paul Rickett.
4.
Councillor Phil Smith.
4.
Councillor Jim Swanson.
4.
And Councillor Turton Levers is absent. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, while Anne is counting the votes, can I just ask your indulgence that we consider bringing the exempt item forward to be the next exempt item, because there is a time pressure on the decision that needs to be made, and it is a serious part of the council's business that needs to be dealt with. I'd like that to be considered, please.
Yeah. And for me, abstain.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Aldridge.
Chairman, can I make a comment?
Yes.
I do realise how important this meeting was tonight, and I'm delighted, obviously, the way things have gone. However, and I take on board what the leader is saying, in my situation, I'm in a situation where I have to leave the meeting, but I have two motions. Now, I know the rule of the council is you can't bring a motion back within the next 6 months, but if it's not discussed tonight, can both motions go on to the next agenda at the next full council meeting?
Can I have some advice from somebody, please?
Yes, Chairman, the meeting in effect is adjourned and we just roll those items over to the next meeting.
All right.
So I can now put those two motions that I've proposed tonight at the next full council meeting, yes?
If that's what council agrees, Councillor Horton.
Thank you.
Are we going to roll all three motions over, Rob?
Well, I've only put two in, Chair, so
Yeah, I know, but we got three on the agenda.
I can only speak on two.
Chair, is that you perhaps consider taking the business item which is exempt and then decide afterwards?
Okay.
But I have to leave, I'm afraid, and that's my problem. Where I'm situated, closing is at 9:30.
Chairman, I would propose.
I move that we defer those two items, Chairman, please. Those two motions.
No, I don't agree with that. We've just had an independent saying that the rules are the rules. We should stick to the rules. So if they can't come back, they can't come back.
Oh, grow up.
No, come on. Chair,
Come
sorry.
on. I thought we worked together on this council.
I'll second that motion of Councillor Kirks. Chairman, I would like to propose that they are rolled over. I mean, we've been going on for nearly, it'll be 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
I think we ought to roll them over to the next meeting.
If it's allowed, I'm in agreement to roll them over, all three of them.
Is the monitoring officer happy with that?
Yeah, just to say, Chair, the monitoring officer had to leave the meeting tonight. She's feeling very unwell. I've confirmed with Michelle, and she just advises that council decides to adjourn the meeting at the end, and those items haven't been debated. They will then form part of the next agenda for council.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we do the exempt and then that's it. What about the questions?
I must leave, with all due respect, Chair, so I bid you all good night.
Night.
Thank you, Councillor Horton.
Chairman, can we just confirm that item was carried, the proportionality report, before we go any further? So that was 39 in favour, 1 against, 5 abstentions and 10 absent. So that's carried, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Anne.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I proposed the questions. We didn't get the answers until after 6 o'clock tonight. So I can, I'm quite happy if my questions roll over. I'm not sure about anybody else, but so there are some inaccuracies, but I probably wouldn't have asked any more questions about it. But, you know.
What about you, Andrew?
We didn't get the questions.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to roll them over. That's not a problem.
Right, okay. Is Councillor Mossop still here?
Yeah, I'm still here. Yes.
Are you happy for your question to be rolled over?
Yeah, I haven't had time to think of a clever enough supplementary anyway, so I'll think about that in the next month or so, and I'm happy for it to be adjourned, yes.
Okay, so right, we're going to item 18 then, exempt information to consider excluding the public and the press for the following items, and if appropriate, the chairman to move that under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting for the following item on the grounds that if they were present, they could be disclosed to them exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of the schedule 12A of the Act as amended. Now, we don't want to go round the table. Does everyone agree that we go into private session?
You need a seconder. I'll second it.
Right. So we got it second. I proposed it. Yeah. Okay. So we're moving now then to item 19. Loan application to East Lindsey District Council from Invest East Lindsey to consider an exempt report. Richard
Excuse me.
We still have
Excuse
live
me.
on YouTube on
We're on
screen.
live.
Oh, we haven't gone yet.
Yeah,
Right.
just bear with me.
All right.
Sorry, I was just removing one or two people.